call meeting to order at 6:11. Let's start off with announcements. There's some Sage Center events in the select board packet. Veterans Breakfast, well, that was yesterday, or today. Taco Bar, Tech Tuesday, that's something the library director is doing on Tuesdays, to help people with audiobooks, magazines, ebooks. It's a great event. There's a wreath making workshop and also an estate planning session. Earth Day 2024, townwide roadside pickup. April 20th, supplies, bags and gloves can be picked up at the town offices, the library or the food mart. We have a pre-town meeting Q&A session scheduled with the town manager and the town clerk on April 23rd at 1 p.m. in the annex. And our annual and special Springtown meeting is April 29th. That's a Monday night at 7 p.m. The last day to register to vote is April 19th. And then we have our annual town election on May 6th. Last day to request vote by mail ballots is April 30th. Okay, regular business. Item A, public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to make a public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item B, town manager updates.
Okay, first item is the correspondence that we sent to the senator's office and to Representative Ramos as well, with the priorities that we talked about a couple of weeks ago at the board meeting. So as you know, we're always given short turnaround time to send this. So we basically take the board's kind of general direction and then write it up. So hopefully you found narratives effectively conveyed your objectives. The priorities that we talked about were education funding, specifically the Chapter 70 formula and the disparate impacts on rural and regional school districts, water capital projects funding, and the fact that it's been typically very little state funding available to support things like water main replacements, pedestrian and cycling infrastructure safety improvements, as well as climate change and mitigation and adaptation, and the costs that are going to come, that are coming and are going to continue to come with that. So I didn't get a response, but historically, as you know, we've gotten not infrequently, we've gotten state budget earmarks for specific things like pedestrian improvements. So I do think that these submittals are probably the basis of when the senator or the rep put in for earmarks. So
I wonder if based on that in the past, the earmarks we've gotten were related to pedestrian safety mostly.
they were, yeah.
So I wonder if was that based on order in the past? I wonder if that was first in order.
I doubt it. I think, I don't know what, I know in the past, we've always talked about Middle Street Bridge, which we left out this year because the state's really done a huge amount of help. I think some of these are squishier. I mean, I think if we put in like a dollar sign, for instance, and I think it's, if we wanted to follow up with this, there's no problem doing that. We could send them, hey, here's a specific thing on River Road. There'd be no harm in doing that. I think the more specific we are, the more they can try to get what we're looking for. But I think the pedestrian, where it's kind of like a bricks and mortar, it's a very tangible thing. Yeah. The Chapter 70, it's a policy issue, not a funding issue. And there's just no, we had our monthly meeting with Pentucket earlier this week, which I was actually going to talk about during other updates, but I'll just talk about it briefly now because it's so kind of attention grabbing. So we met with the business manager, Suzanne Wallace, on Tuesday, just our monthly finance directors meeting. I'll just give you one factoid that will make your head spin. So in this year's state budget, the total statewide increase in Chapter 70 funding was $263 million. And there are 319 school districts in the state. Of that 263 million, 95% of it went to 108 districts. The remaining 211 districts got 5%.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
Based on the size?
based on the chapter 70 formula. So the formula is, it's so obvious and it's so clear and it's so well documented by groups like the Mass Association of Regional School Districts that it has a disparate impact on regional and rural school districts. It's so clear.
Mhm.
But the legislature is dominated by, you know, the more urban districts, and they benefit greatly from the formula. So, we don't have a lot of optimism that the legislature is really gonna tackle that.
I almost feel like we're obligated to keep pointing it out, though.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
All right, next item, the MVP, I included, you know, some updates in there on the River Road. We have since, pinned down May 1st is now the confirmed date for the rescheduled planning forward event that was, postponed, a week or so ago because of the, snowstorm. We've been having some really good meetings there. There's a lot of, very urgent concern about, the tides and the frequency with which the water's reaching the roads, and there's some undermining, there's some significant trees that have come down. So, you know, this is, I've been telling staff, like, when we have this big, grant end event, which is tentatively penciled in for June 20th, that's not confirmed, but that's, what we're looking at. That I think the more people, we just want to get as many people in the community as possible there, because we think that, the situation is, pretty quickly becoming probably the single largest, financial exposure the town has, like above all else. It's very, very concerning. So we'll continue to keep you apprised of
What time will
that.
the meeting be?
I'm sorry.
What time will the meeting be?
It would be probably 5:30 to 8:30. There's a lot of material to cover, because what you've seen the draft, reports along the way, with the culvert analysis, the shoreline stabilization. The next major work product from the consultants, which we expect to receive in early May, is their, shoreline stabilization options. And so all of those work products are gonna culminate in a single final report that's gonna kind of put all that in a final form. So this enormous amount of information that's gonna be presented at that final meeting, all of which has been in circulation to some extent with the meetings and certainly in the Climate Change Resiliency Committee meetings, but we're you know, as we get closer to, you know, a single final report, we want to bring as much visibility to that as we can, because we're gonna need to continue to look to town meeting for support on some of the engineering and permitting costs and eventually, capital costs associated with, mitigation. Next item is really a big item. I don't know if we want to go through all that under manager updates. That's where I had included the draft warrants. And I had, there have been a couple of revisions that I sent around, earlier today that you have in front of you reflecting, legal markup. Nothing significant on legal markup, but I don't know if you want to get into that now, or since we're already running a little late, if you want to.
yeah, I was wondering, would you mind if we do the special event? We have two people here for that, just to get them on.
Yeah, that sounds great, yeah.
All right, so we'll move ahead to, action items E. Sorry. Item C, request for a special event permit, ALS Tri-State Trek on June 22nd, 2024. Did you find the page? If you,
I've got the packet here.
It's page 89 in the package.
Would have come through for a long time. Thank you.
Yep, there you go.
so are you Kevin?
Yeah.
Great. So.
Based on your jacket, we can tell you what the.
Yeah.
Try to make it as clear. Very easy for you.
So, any questions on this?
From us?
Yes.
Yeah. June 22nd, has anybody confirmed that there are no other events in town that will conflict with that or require police attention on the same day?
Well, let's see, I think we had the response from, yeah, we had the response from Dwyer. With the one officer posted at Coffin Street is what he'd look for. In terms of other events, I'm not aware of any.
Are you thinking like high school events?
Yeah, you
No,
just
we
wanna have
have-
graduation and a bike thing at the same day, that'd be nuts.
What day is graduation? Do we know
Let me guess, June 22nd.
Is this a Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Saturday. So it does say in the application, not applicable for police details, so, but you communicated with the police chief?
Yeah, I know from last year, and I had noted it on our cue sheet just because of
Okay.
what he had said last year.
Okay,
I have a question, but we're gonna,
go ahead. Yeah.
any advance notice signage, like typically when there's an event in town, they put out signs a few days ahead of time?
Yeah, I know last year you guys asked us to do that, and we're more than happy to do it again this year. So we will arrow the route the week prior. So that Friday, Saturday, normally we send people out, so I can make sure that they put up signs with the arrows, just to make sure people are aware that the bike race is gonna come through.
Great, and it will have the times on there, okay, great,
Just another comment.
Yeah.
The map in there is not very helpful. Because this the whole route all the way up to New Hampshire, you really. Again, I will be fine with on this one. I just-
Yeah.
Future app.
Just more of a zoomed in one.
Yeah, and then
Absolutely.
Yeah, also.
Some directions are really
Yeah,
messed up.
I'm really confused by the directions.
Well, a lot of those are Merrimack and it's not.
Right, but, I'm assuming you're coming across Rock's Village Bridge and then you're turning left onto River Road.
Mhm.
But the 3 steps before that.
I'm more than happy to send a full cue sheet for next
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
just so you guys have
Yeah,
the full.
okay, or you might even want to take a look at that because.
Yeah.
It's possible they're not even right.
Those are Merrimack.
Because it says West Newbury, continue straight, West Newbury left. The next thing is West Newbury, turn left onto River Road. That makes sense. But the 3 before that, I think maybe you're on the other side of the river,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure. It's not,
It is, 'cause that's River Road.
well, no,
You go
okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I was trying to finish.
Look at it and
Yes.
send a revised.
I'll make sure everything is
Okay.
Right,
correct.
okay.
Particularly for the ride.
And my apologies if I've gotten it
No.
wrong, but I can't make sense
Don't
of
be
it.
sorry, you're completely fine.
Yeah.
I'd rather be brought to my attention if it is wrong,
Okay,
to be able to fix it for real.
okay, great, thanks.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, Chris, any other questions on this one?
Yeah,
So it's just Coffin Street, right? Yeah.
right, one off as opposed to the coffin. Yes. No, I'm good otherwise.
Anything else, Rick?
No.
The motion to approve the presented pending submittal of the directions correctly.
Second.
Right, all in favor? Aye,
Hi.
all right, thank you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Here, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is D, Yukon Sports LLC. Hello, Rich, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Another year,
It is. Thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
sure. Let's see, any questions here?
Yeah.
So 13 police details, have you checked with the police chief, or do we not need? The application doesn't answer that question.
Police chief
Yeah.
does, though.
We've worked with the police chief in the past. We've been doing this race for a number of years. They're always a great help. We've set this course up so it's primarily right-hand turns and the runners aren't going across traffic. So it's usually pretty straightforward, but yeah, whatever the police chief suggests for police details is exactly what we're gonna get. So
Okay, I'm
always
just-
happy to have their support.
Right. Just, when you fill out the application, instead of leaving it blank, if you could just say, we'll check with the police or whatever the police department asks for, that would be, we want to make sure we, get all the information that's needed. We have the insurance, certificate of insurance.
We do, yes.
here.
Rich, have you seen the email from Chief Dwyer from January 9th? Looks in our packet, it looks like he sent that to the town clerk. Did the clerk share that with you?
I'm just taking a look now to see.
It would either be
I-
from town clerk at W Newbury or from Dwyer at West Newbury Safety. But But he's outlined, looks like 6 detail officers is what
And
he's.
an
Yes,
EMS.
I see this right here, yes.
Okay,
Forgive me, I had misplaced that. But I'm looking at it right now.
okay.
Is this for one race or three? There are 3 dates listed.
Yeah,
see
it's 3 the same course. We do it 3 times over the course of the year.
So theoretically, we're approving all 3 dates.
That's the hope. That's the application, yeah.
We've done it traditionally.
I don't recall that.
I'd rather see 3 applications, just so, again, any other events on any of these dates should be confirmed.
I don't know, efficiency in doing it one time for
Yeah, I
all
mean,
3
we
days,
did that.
as long as we get it in the schedule, you know, as long as.
Yeah, again, I just would like to confirm, or have somebody confirm that those 3 dates, you don't have some other large event in town, some horse thing that, or whatever that could conflict with this.
Well, I would assume that the police chief would be aware if there were
But
events
I
that are
think,
gonna cause.
yeah, definitely good to confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because,
I don't assume. Again, any advance notice signs on these race days?
Yeah, we always go out the week ahead and put up signs to give everyone a heads up that the race is coming.
And you have water and Gatorade stations. You're gonna have trash collection barrels at those stations as well?
We do, yeah. And we have a sweeper van that follows behind the last runner that collects all those materials and the signs as well.
The last runner has to pick them up? Wow, I gotta speed up my pace.
We're not that bad, no.
Okay.
So, looking at this email, I just wanna make sure Dwyer's aware that this is for 3 different dates. So it's not clear to me from his response that he's getting that it's for 3 dates, so we just wanna make sure.
And I wasn't sure. I didn't know if that was just a formatted thing that it left dates in place or what, you know? I like his map, by the way.
Email exchange that I had with the chief, and I have the 3 race dates noted there, and his response is that he would need the 6 details. I don't think there's any confusion there. I appreciate the attention to detail to make sure that we're all on the same page, but just reading through his email, it looks like he's understood that.
Okay, we just have the email between him and the town clerk, so if you have something else that he's referencing the 3 dates, then that's fine. All right, anything else? Chris, Rick?
No, but we should confirm though that, I think the motion should be contingent on there not being a conflict.
Exactly.
Um,
I'll make a motion to approve the UCAN sports races on the 3 dates as noted, pending confirmation that there are no other events conflicting on those dates, and that the police chief is aware that those are 3 separate dates.
I'll second, but I just want to clarify, when you say no other events, so.
The impact is,
Yeah, that impact, exactly, okay, so conflicting is emphasized.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, because you could have something at the high school, makes no difference.
Right,
Okay, that was a second?
yes.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with it.
So just to make sure that I'm dotting my i's and crossing the t's, should I follow up with the chief to be sure, or is that going to be done internally for you folks?
well,
I don't
So
drop the ball.
the town clerk would normally be here tonight. He's unavailable for a personal reason, but he and I will be in the office tomorrow, so I'll brief him on this and make sure he talks to Dwyer and that he gets back to you to confirm, ideally to confirm that the 3 dates are clear. So you should hear from Jim Blatchford tomorrow.
Okay, that's great. I just wanted to make sure I got my homework done.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again. I appreciate the help.
yeah, have a good night.
You too.
All right, so, Angus, you wanna go back to the updates? I mean, we kinda
Sure.
left halfway through.
Yeah, so in terms of the warrant, you know, when the FinCom convenes at 7, their agenda is focused on the 4 or 5 items that are still open there. You have in front of you the complete draft warrants for annual and special, so I don't know if you want to talk through that now, and just see if there's,
Yeah,
but that's, you know, that's perhaps everything else we're doing tonight, that's the most important.
Yes.
So,
all right, let's start with the annual town meeting. So on Article 6, the highlighted amount, why is that highlighted?
oh,
I just
it's,
have the,
oh, okay, yeah, it's not in this one. There was a question going into yesterday's water commission meeting as the budget and surplus and whether if there was a change in the date of effect of the rates, but there wasn't. So that number, that 74,904 is a good number, yeah.
right, so it looks like there's some other corrections in that article, just numbers.
Yeah, there was something happening with the bottom line in, where, let's see,
It actually wasn't carried, it wasn't added to it or something.
yeah, it was between the indirect costs and, there was something that was not summing, but I confirmed with Jenny and Jody and Mark, this 1,272,462 is the right bottom line number.
Yeah, that had come up at the last meeting, we were looking at Jody's schedule and it seemed like Rich pointed out, I was adding in something, again.
Okay, I think the next one with any edits on it is Article 15. Just clarification.
Yeah, there was there was the correction for article, what's shown as article 11, so with just adding the council on aging revolving fund. There's some, things on who's the sponsor that I want to make sure before we sign it, that those all reflect how you want it to show. Yeah, 15, 16, and 18, those are just the standard language that council recommends to make sure it's encompassing of the cup holders and things.
So is facilities director Brian's title?
Yes,
Okay, some reason I thought it was
or
different.
facilities is manager.
Yeah.
Facilities manager, yeah.
I'm sure he would like to be the director. We'll have to pay him more money though. I did ask Angus to make a change in what's now Article 22 on hunting bylaw, just to clarify that the change wasn't to prohibit hunting, it was to remove the allowance for software approval.
We haven't gotten to that yet.
No, it's just that we're going through this language.
One, I have a question on, I'm not sure if it's in the annual or the special. The high hazard tree removal.
It's probably special.
Okay, when we get there, that's like. And then this,
Anything else in the annual that people want?
yeah. It was the previous 23, having 2 documents, is missing the thing. 23 was the wetlands protection bylaw.
Mhm.
My question is, would it be better to put that towards the end of the meeting because the amount of time it might consume at that point? I don't know what presents better, I think that might be considered.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Angus, what's your reasoning for putting it there? I know you put some thought into this. So.
Well, it's the, sometimes you put controversial, things at the end.
Mhm.
It has both ways, no one likes, one way or the other, you're not gonna please everybody.
Right.
Some people will be, if they're there on one issue and it's last, they're gonna be irritable the entire meeting because they're annoyed that their issue is last.
Yeah.
But if you put it earlier, then it could, I think that if the warrant stays as is, I think there is a very high probability, in my opinion, that it goes to a second night. I also think, the physical space, we have that on for later tonight to really pin down, is it gonna be the annex or is it gonna be Page School? But I think if the warrant stays as is, I have real concerns that the annex would be sufficient.
Okay.
This last fall, or last spring, we had about 284 people, and that was really, really pushing it. And,
We're gonna have more.
and I think we have more, as written, so that's something, when we get to that topic, I have a little bit more background from Page versus annex, but.
I'm more optimistic we can get through it in one night.
I mean, there's also, this is probably a, kind of a, this might not be a popular idea, but if you feel that the warrants as written are just too much and that it's gonna go to multiple nights, you could do a separate warrant with the bylaw amendments. And just have it posted as a separate warrant on a separate night. That's got,
You might lose people who
You-
don't have that
you-
interest.
you
We've
would.
already got the
You
vote
would.
there engaged.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of key to keep
yeah.
that.
so,
Yeah, and I think that would bias the attendance
It would.
towards people who are red hot.
yeah,
Yeah, that's,
I think we should keep the order as is. I mean, I don't think you can predict what, because the citizens petition one at the end could also be.
I mean, I did intentionally put it at basically the beginning of the bylaws, because for some people who are there just on that topic, I think, it's important, I think, to get the financial articles taken care of, but it's really the first bylaw that's taken up. And I think that's really kind of, acknowledging that there'd be more people for that than the others, rather than if it's very last. I do think people get really bent out of shape if they feel that you've gone out of your way to put it at the end of the meeting.
Mhm.
But keeping in mind that the annual follows the special, and there's so much on the special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the special. Are there any,
Article 1. To the revised.
So the sunset, I did move that. I was never comfortable with having, because that's the first article that's taken up, and, I'm viewing it as a housekeeping article.
yeah,
Some people may not, but I think putting it right front and center, I felt like was probably increasing the odds it becomes a flashpoint, so we did reorder that and put that at the end of the special.
Okay, because I'm looking at Article 1 here, which is the
Yeah.
sunsets, and well, this was totally different, okay.
Yeah, that was really the major change I made on the special.
So on the sunsets.
Yeah.
We vote those in the entirety, we don't do each one?
Well, it's one vote, but someone could certainly, put a hold on it, and call out part of it, and,
I know that's always Casey's concern when you have 5
yeah.
different things. One is of interest, another isn't,
Mhm.
and again, you would hope that they would embrace them all, but I don't know.
Could that be, you could modify it on the floor, I guess, but that gets complicated. If
I think when we meet with Casey, she'll express her concern that can get very messy.
I mean, it could be 5 separate articles. That's just,
Even messier.
yeah, so we tried to do it, as, but I would think it would not be difficult, I don't think, if someone was to say, for instance, put a hold and make a motion to strike item 4 in its entirety, whatever, or whatever number. That would be a simple motion that the moderator could then, that would be debated, it's either removed or it's not, and then the main motion goes to the floor. If someone wanted to amend one, that could get messy, but.
Can we go back to just for look on it, just this, I'm getting too confused.
yeah, the annual Article 14, we didn't talk about that. That's the, $200,000 from free cash. Did you see the email from Angus this afternoon?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, what I was thinking of was the one from Richie Baker.
Mhm.
If my recollection
So
is,
that's actually currently at the end of this.
Okay.
The annual town meeting.
we didn't vote favorably, nor did the FinCom, so. Are they doing a rationale? And then we didn't put a sunset date, even though there was money involved.
Oh, we did.
We did.
Did you?
We
Okay.
did. Yeah, we added a sunset date and we would do a rationale, absolutely.
Suppose this goes forward, who's in charge of it? You've got $100,000 out there with no responsible party. That's what I started thinking. There's no,
That would be an important thing to have in the motion. We can't change the article language at all because it's exactly, we have to print it exactly as the
so I
citizens.
just started thinking
But the
about it.
motion, you would definitely want to make it clear.
And I don't know who would control the RFP, the funding, the whole
Right, right.
process. There's no responsible party there. That's frightening.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk about that a little bit more on one of the later items. He has expressed a willingness to, move no action. If we are gonna move forward with this, one of the consulting articles, so we can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fraught, that's why we all voted
Right.
against it, so.
Yeah.
On the Article 14 one, reading through the minutes, I realized that all the talk about that $200,000 was to, to counteract the additional stabilization fund. So the way that this is written, it doesn't really reflect that, so that's what that email chain was about.
Yes, I saw that in the email.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would almost rather have this be worded completely, not mention anything about the tax rate, have a separate article, but can we do that, Angus, if this is how the article has been proposed?
I think you can, it's your warrant, the deadline is 14 days, until it's posted, it's not posted.
Okay.
I think we always err on the side of caution,
Mhm.
but really it's your warrant and it's what's posted. So the intent has always been, as you said, to transfer 200 from free cash to make sure the addition of the operating budget doesn't affect the tax rate. If you instead simply change the budget to get from 800 to 600 and then separately transferred 200,000 from free cash into stabilization, you're taking the operating budget out of it altogether. I don't think anyone would cry foul because you're doing exactly what it just doesn't show in the operating budget as a $200,000 increase.
I mean, I think then that's also not, the language in there was based on a proposed or something that hadn't even been voted yet, which I think is messy. Is that what Tim was commenting on?
Well, and also because, there's really two things. One is Department of Revenue, that if you're reducing the tax rate, that's a thing that we have to report. And it's important that language be really clean
Mhm.
and not written in such a way as it could suggest like a if-then kind of,
Yeah, okay.
conditional transfer. Yeah, I think that was the main concern.
All right, do you have any thoughts on that, Chris or Rick? I mean, you were, from CEC, it's clear in the report. that that was-
CRC, that was the intent. So Angus, it seems to me that the reason to have it, the full 800 in the operating budget and then transfer the 200 over is that it makes it much easier to look back and understand what happened, what was done in the past. And as opposed to looking at the operating budget and then searching for an article,
Yeah.
that might or might not be there for additional funds. So, I don't feel strongly one way or another, but I do see a sound reason to do it that way, to do it the way it's currently shown.
What about Jenny? Yeah, that's one of the most reasonable way to do it to keep the accounting clean.
I think the way we have it in with just transferring 200 to reduce the tax rate.
Okay.
And with regard to the policy intent, that could be reflected, and it would be reflected in the rationale. But I think trying to, what Tim, he said the article shouldn't have any policy or he used the word advocacy, and he wasn't trying to, but he said it just needs to, because it's reducing the tax rate, that's what it's doing. What reason you're doing that really shouldn't be in the article. Because the effect of that is to reduce the tax rate. So whatever your reasons are, really shouldn't be in the article.
Yeah, I just thought that what the intent was is to put 200,000 from free cash into stabilization to supplement the budget amount. You know, it's the same effect. but
Same
I
effect.
just- I-
It would, yeah, it would have the same effect.
Mhm.
I mean, really, what happened from that night at CIC is they, were moving toward recommending a higher amount.
Mhm.
And I had suggested that rather than where it was fairly late in the budget process, to add 200,000 to the operating budget and the effect that would have on the taxpayer, especially when we were sitting on $2.3 million of free cash, you know, so I had
Yeah, I mean,
suggested.
that was really the driver, was the fact that we're sitting on $2.3 million.
Right, so I had suggested we could do that and offset it so that it's in the operating budget, but we're not having the effect of, you know, hitting the taxpayer for that. So that was really how it came about. I don't know that the CIC would care I don't think they would care if it's in the operating budget or if it's just a direct free cash transfer.
Mhm.
Rick makes a valid point that in terms of year-on-year budgeting, there's some value arguably to have it in the operating budget. But I think either of the approaches are totally fine and they have the same financial impact either way.
Mhm.
The CIC, now the number's reduced to 1.3 million, right? Once you factor in a article, so
Yeah,
that's different than 2.3. At that point, I could understand, so. We're pulling quite a bit out this year.
yeah.
I prefer the separate transfer, but, I just think it's not, the intent is not as clean this way.
I have no preference in the vote, whatever the majority decides. Put me on the winning team.
All right, well, I don't wanna get too bogged down in this, because we're already like almost 7 o'clock. Is that the only other question on what's written here?
Article 9. About the high hazard trees. I have it in my notes that we voted 50,000, but that says 80.
This is special town meeting?
Yeah. February 20th. I went and looked at that.
No, I think the 50,000 was in.
Okay.
50 in the main budget, had 50 in, put another
50 in
50,
the annual budget.
and then they wanted the 80, but we had reduced it to 50. They get 150 instead of 180 was the intent.
Okay, I don't recall that.
I went through all my,
And what does it say?
That was in your notes?
this says 80,000.
No, but the table that, you know, the article,
It says 80,
does it?
yeah. It's like the number got put in 80.
Did you look at the minutes?
I looked at my notes. They're even better than minutes.
All right, well, that's one thing you gotta resolve.
I remember we were trying to skinny it down because we were concerned.
Yeah, so I just don't, do you happen to know what meeting that was? Do you have
February
it?
20th.
All right, so those were in our packet for minutes, right?
Yeah, earlier years. February 26th,
Oh, we don't have 20.
that I see.
Sorry, what did I miss on the?
So the question is on Article 9,
Mhm.
Chris is thinking that it should be 50,000 instead of 80,000.
I thought we had reduced that number and my notes indicated we reduced it to 50,000.
I was just looking for the minutes.
50 in the
Are you talking about the trees?
trees.
Yeah, we went over that at our last meeting for the fine tooth comb. We all resolved that our understanding was it would be 50.
All right, let me just find the minutes so we can confirm that.
So what I have in the scorecard was on February 20th. Amount increased by 30,000 to reflect reduction of proposed DPW operating budget, because you'll recall, I had carried
130.
extra money in the operating budget. You had reduced the operating budget by 30 and put that 30 into the article, was Well, that's what I wrote down.
No, that's fine, I know that's what you wrote,
Okay, yeah.
but we went back, everyone went back through their own notes, came up with the same thing that we expected.
I don't know what's in the operating budget then. The total was to get 150. I don't know. There was 50 in the operating budget previously. Right, already built in.
Well, 150,
So, you're talking about
And that's-
two different things.
right.
Last year, the operating budget was 50.
50.
This year,
It's 50 within a line of 150. There's a highway, sidewalk and trees.
Right.
But so it's not broken out as 50,
Right.
it's a
Oh,
100.
that was my understanding. Is they had 50 grand to take care of trees. We gave them another 50 in the operating,
the
a
warrant,
100 in their line item, and then another 50 in the article.
the point is, we all had the same understanding that what we were expecting to see on the warrant was 50.
I'm not sure anybody has the same understanding, right?
But no, the FinCom members, the 5 FinCom members.
So,
Well, I guess I just want to make the point, I've circulated this all the time, it's had this number unchanged since February 20th, and no one has brought this to my attention until right now, so I'm just saying, I've circulated this how many times?
We just met last week, and that's when we discussed it.
so I guess is
Okay,
there,
but still,
yeah, the point is.
no one's
it's
brought it to
late
my
in the
attention
game
until
here, so,
right now.
yeah.
Yeah, but we can change it right now.
Well, but we're spending time trying to figure it out right now. Is there a way to look at the minutes? I'm not finding the February 20th minutes is when we voted on it.
And that would be where I would look, is the February 20th.
I don't know how to access it from here with the,
I can try and do it very quick.
Yeah,
I can get them off the website, right?
if they're
not sure.
approved and posted,
they weren't in this week's packet, so they must be approved. They may not be posted yet.
if they're, I think they posted already. Yeah, here they go.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this says 50.
Well, it says in the first paragraph, Philip felt that 100,000 should be in the amount in the line item, 50 still separate for the ash trees.
That was the discussion.
So minus 30,000.
But there you go. So that's from the line item budget. So do we take it out of the line item? And then decide to leave it in?
Well, it doesn't say that.
50 for the ash. That was the distinction. The article was for the ash trees, right? And
I just want to be cautious as to what we have.
Yeah, I want to get it right, whatever the right number is, I'm just a little puzzled, because I keep this every meeting, I send it around.
I apologize. I just saw it today, so.
What I wrote was that we act. That's what I wrote, so, and I did have, on this other thing in your packet, this one here, Jenny went through every single cell in here and proved every single cell in here, so maybe we're both wrong, and that's completely possible, but it's been in this worksheet as 80 for 7
But
weeks.
that's only one part of the component. If we only added 30 to the line item, then this would be 80. If we added 50, this should be 50. I think the intent was to be a total of 150.
All right, so how are we gonna sort this out? And should we do it at the end of the meeting or?
Yeah, I think we should, because whether it's 50 or 80, if there's a correct answer.
Yeah.
And there's no sense burning time. And
Okay.
I just wish someone had brought it to my attention before
Understood.
this night.
Okay. So anything else on the language? Okay. All right, so we'll just table the final on this to the end of the meeting. Well, it's 6:57. We don't have is Jim coming, Rob?
Well, it's not 7:02.
I'm just making sure he's coming because Dan is online, so.
Yeah, so Dan is, gonna be available until 8-ish or so, or later.
Okay,
So we will have a quorum in any regards.
okay,
Jim didn't specifically say he wasn't or was.
all right. So the next item, you want correspondence with Mass DOT, is there anything to report on that other than?
No, there hasn't been a response yet. So one thing on the, Memorial Day parade, we had a working meeting yesterday. Everything's going very well there. Ron Ross and, also our new Veterans Agency,
good.
owner really,
Mhm.
really hands-on with it, which is a huge help.
Yeah.
They're working on getting a, Grand Marshal. One thing that's come up is, the potential to have the post-parade ceremony in the town hall rather than outdoors.
Oh, nice.
Because of heat, and it actually would help a lot with setup and breakdown, because the guys wouldn't have to break everything down right after the parade. They could leave until the next morning, so I kind of like that idea. We don't need to make a decision tonight, but, anyhow, so we're working on that. Rebecca's been a huge help on that. Next item, that's
So do we think that based on normal attendance, is there enough space in?
these are all things the other thought that came up is the band gonna be overpowering inside as opposed to outside? So, we'll have this on a future agenda. We don't need to make a decision, just providing an update. Next item is a typo on the, agenda. I'm out the 16th to the 19th, not the 16th to the 29th.
Nice try.
Which but just so everyone knows, 4 days, not 14.
So is there anything other than the warrant? I mean, I can.
No, just the AP warrant, that's a big help, just to
Yeah.
keep the checks going while I'm out.
And
So
that's
if you're willing to do
Wednesday.
that. It's usually ready Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
Who's gonna do that?
I will do that. All right, seeing as how we have everybody from FinCom here, let's pause for before item G, under updates, and move to item E. Joint session with the FinCom to finalize these few items for town meeting. Call to order.
Yeah, so we have a quorum, there's 5 members here, Dan is remote, and Dan knows that when he votes, he's gonna have to do it by voice, not just by raising his hand.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, very good, excellent, thanks for being here again. So Angus, you wanna go through it?
Sure, yeah, the first item's the water operating budget. You had the detailed breakdown in the prior meeting toward the end of March. I didn't include that in this one, because all I really had was the numbers. They're largely consistent with that, but I didn't have a detailed breakdown that corresponded to them.
So what was the issue? Just a math issue or?
Well, I mean, part of the issue is there were like multiple people preparing multiple budgets. And so what I had included in the last packet was what I got from the water department.
Okay,
And there was a math.
There was a
issue at the
math.
bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
And that was corrected, sorted out, everything's square between, Jenny, Joey, and the thing I was doing to the water department.
Okay. And did you guys talk about the stipends at the meeting? Where does that?
We did, at length.
Can you share
I'm gonna tell you what I told Rick.
Mhm.
I think we wasted more valuable time talking about stipends than we should have. I think there are other more important things that we needed to talk about. But what I've suggested is that we read our budget at town meeting as written, with the stipends and everything else in there. If you folks or somebody in the audience wants to object to the stipends, then feel free. And we'll discuss it on the town meeting floor and let the town meeting decide. And
Well,
whatever happens, happens. And once it's over, regardless of what it is.
so, I mean, what would you say if somebody objected to it? What would your rationale be?
I'm not sure yet. But I mean, it was something that, you know, frankly, in the past year, we've had other more important things to think about. You know, 2 tanks being down and need to be refurbished, a pump going down. You know, coming up with the budget, setting new rates. Somewhere along the line, stipends is down here and not up here someplace. And we've also decided that after the election, that we will discuss it as a board with a new, when we have a new board members. But as far as I'm concerned, we'll go as is. Whoever wants to object to it or wants to call out the stipends, I don't care whether it's you folks, Angus, somebody in the audience. If you feel free, want to do it, feel free. We'll see what we have. If nobody wants to say anything, that's fine too. It's whatever happens. But like
It's just a shame to introduce controversy on a town meeting floor, you know?
that's up to whoever wants to make that motion.
Okay.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, they won't be, whoever gets up and challenges the stipends, it's up to them whether they want to make that controversy or not. You know, as far as I'm concerned, it's not up to us. So
But you did have the opportunity to discuss and
We
make changes.
discussed it at length. Yeah, we discussed it at length.
Angus, you said there was possibly an insurance issue with stipends. Could you explain that or?
Yeah, there is a Mass General Law that says if somebody gets, if an elected official gets any amount of pay, even $1, if they chose to, they would be able to join the town's health insurance, and the town, under state law, would have to pay 50% of the premium. So there's a, you know,
Had that problem before.
financial, you know, theoretical financial exposure. Right now, no one is doing that. No one on the Water Commission for years or maybe ever has done that. But it is a law that, you know, does create you know,
Okay,
it's a law. So I know one thing that was talked about, I believe at the last meeting, was an idea that maybe stipends at some future time would be restored for other elected boards. And so that's something that people would need to be aware of, because the more people would be subject to the law, the more potential that could create some financial
You know, at some point,
exposure to the
So
town.
that's a state law,
That's a state law.
because we all know the problem we had previously, it was
Yeah.
somebody never paying the insurance.
That's right.
I thought, was it just the select board said no on their stipends?
No, it was, I haven't gone back to before I started, but I can tell you when I started, 2018, the Board of Assessors were still in there with a stipend. That was removed at the direction of the then select board. And the Board of Assessors wasn't happy. They didn't choose to make a motion on town meeting. They just kind of, you know, they weren't happy about it, but they didn't, you know, they accepted the budget that was proposed. It did not include their stipends. I don't know, going back further than that, if there are other elected boards. Obviously, there was a time the select board had stipends that I think was done away with maybe a year or 2 years before that. And I don't know about other elected boards like library, planning, board of health. I have not.
Because it is a huge liability if the town has to pay 50% of it.
Potential liability, you know, if someone chooses to opt into the health insurance, so.
Now, you could not
Yeah.
make a policy
No.
because it's the state law.
Correct, yeah.
No.
I mean, if we really
Can
feel
of worms.
strongly about it, we could, you know, we could take it to a future town meeting.
Yeah.
As to whether or not there should be a policy, you know, we might, if somebody feels strongly enough, could propose a policy. That there specifically be no stipends. But, you know, there could be a lot of discussion on the topic. I personally don't think it's worth it at this point in time to spend a whole lot of time on this.
Okay, so let's go. I mean, I won't vote in favor of the budget. I mean, I feel like we had this conversation last year, and I really object to the stonewalling that the water department's not willing to talk about it. I feel like this board has gone out of their way to support the water department, contribute ARPA funds. We're working with you to identify a water source, and this is a small thing to show good faith.
You have done just that. We've decided we were gonna do something a little bit different. We are going to discuss it again when we have a new board.
All right.
I am not in favor of it either, so what happens if it gets a negative vote?
It just, we can talk about it on town floor, I guess, which I really don't want to do, but I don't feel like.
You're not in favor of the water department budget because,
As written with.
I find the stipend a huge liability. We saw what happened in the past when the select people getting $1 and got on insurance, and that insurance number is gonna be significant. And then then you've got monitoring issues with it. So if it's $1,700, I don't think that level of jeopardy is reasonable.
Well, at this point, all we can do is vote whether to support or not support the budget, so
Right.
the time of conversation is at town meeting, I guess. So. Do we want to vote to not support it, or do you want to vote to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to support the budget, I should.
All right,
I'll second the motion.
all right, all in favor,
Aye.
all opposed? Aye.
No, nay.
So, Finance Committee, any more discussion on the water department? I have a question, Angus. As you presented the article, that's the thing that has to go to town meeting for. Yeah, right. So whatever the select board does or FinCom does, doesn't change the article that will go to the floor.
Well, a different motion could be,
It's a water.
Right, yeah, right, that's actually, yeah, it's whoever makes the motion. So whether the water commission or someone else, or, it's whoever makes the
My
motion.
point is.
The printed warrant is what you see.
My point is that this is the water department budget, and they operate under a little different set of rules as to how the rest of the town budget goes. In other words, if they make the motion as Angus has written it for the article, that's what we'll be voting on. And so you're a little bit in the same position of, it's a little bit different than when you can decide not to take something to a warrant. This is a thing where the water department will make a motion about their budget to include the stipends. And you'll be in the same position the FinCom is, meaning that you recommending against it. Correct?
right,
Okay, fair enough, fair statement?
Yeah.
So any more discussion on this? Dan, you're still there?
I make a motion to accept the water department budget as submitted.
Second motion.
So do we want to continue discussing it, or should we go right to a vote?
I mean, the insurance ramifications is concerning. I don't know why anybody wouldn't take advantage of that, if it was not true. But that's my only comment.
Okay, so we're gonna vote?
Yes.
All in favor of what's been presented by the Board of Water Commissioners? And all opposed?
Opposed.
Dan's opposed, and how are you voting?
Abstain.
You're abstaining, so it's 3 in favor, 1 negative, 1 abstention. Thank you.
all right, so the next item is the article for the water pump, and thanks for putting all the detail in here.
I thought I had that broken down when I put it in, but I obviously did not.
Yeah. Any questions on this?
No, I do appreciate it because it made it much clearer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like last time there was something wrong with me and my math, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Make a motion,
I can find the article number.
Well, we can just approve,
44,000.
yes.
Make a motion to approve the $44,000 for the water department pumps and ancillary.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Finance committee, any more discussion on this item? Ready to vote?
I make a motion to support the water department article for water pumps. As submitted.
Yeah, it's water pumps, distribution lines, valves, and equipment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All of the above.
All of it, whatever is needed to get the job done. So all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, the next item is the water source exploration. Note the cost here was changed to 60,000 from 50.
This was one that the select board's already voted on, so the FinCom has not. Because the last meeting we had, it was the first time you were really hearing about it in any substance, so.
So if there's any question, I don't know if you want to discuss it, Rob, for our FinCom, if there's any questions.
I don't know, does anybody want to discuss it?
This followed on from the warrant article at the last town meeting where we had an engineer do a study and they've identified a couple potential sites. And so this is to do preliminary investigation of those sites. Yeah,
Yeah.
the first step is going to be a seismic refraction analysis. So it's not actually drilling the wells, but it's making sure from their engineering study that those are viable sites. And if they are, they'll install a well there to do a pump test.
You do a couple or three?
Or
you
start
do-
with one,
start
the
with
top one, and make sure that that one's,
Right,
gonna
so,
work or not, and if that doesn't, then we'll go to the next.
yeah, and so, the amount being requested will cover how much work?
Well, it depends if the seismic, refraction analysis is about 10,000. A well could be, I can't remember the total was,
Could be as much as 50.
yeah,
Okay.
because they might put, it'd be a well field, so there'd be multiple wells. So,
So the idea,
Also with some funding.
So the scenario.
right, that's an important point where.
Yeah, there's some funding remaining from previous article.
Right, there's gonna be about 10,000, so the total potential, the total available funding, if this passed as proposed, is 70, the 60 plus the 10 that's existing. So the idea was this, refraction.
seismic.
Could be done on two different sites, if the
Right.
first one didn't pan out, and then you'd still have 50.
Exactly, right, that's
Yeah.
really what I was asking.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if they're chosen well, then maybe we only have to do one site, that's great, but two is good, yeah.
If we strike out in special town,
So-
meeting, we ask for more.
Yeah.
All,
Yeah,
to keep going.
Or you would have fun, so say it went to a third and a fourth and a fifth, all you can't do is drill, then you go to the fall.
right,
So
so yeah,
you
you
could-
could do the seismic refraction on 2, 3, 4
Exactly.
sites. whether
You could
you
run
would.
that out, and then you might still have some money left over, and then you go to fall for the drilling, but that's probably not bad timing anyway. I mean, this is all rather good news in a way, I think.
It is, yeah.
So anyway,
It'll be good news if we.
if there's water, yeah.
well, yeah, what caveats are they putting on the report? Yeah, you're right, of course, yeah. the fine water.
Question,
So,
if I may, Rob, excuse me. Is it 10K per site to do the seismic refraction? So if you go to site A, it's 10K, site B, it's 10K.
Well,
Yeah,
it
because you have
sounds
to
like,
mob and demob.
yeah, it sounds like there might be some economies of scale, but
If you're
But-
doing all three in one day, but
Yeah.
where we're doing the seismic, and if it's positive, they'll go to well drilling, we kind of lose that economy of scale, if, you know.
Okay,
But one thing that, to just be clear, it's not like a fixed fee, that's a budget number. So, whether it's 10, it might be 8,700, but it's not like a fixed fee of $10,000. It's the 10,000 was given as a budget number to do that.
okay, thank you.
anything else or a motion?
I make a motion to accept I'm trying to find the actual wording in the article, but the,
Water source exploration.
Water source exploration budget as supplied, as submitted.
Second?
All in favor? So we have unanimous, consent on that one.
Okay, the next item is,
Rationale, sunset.
Yeah, so, I think we already did the one for the water pump well field. We just didn't pass the article. Angus, is that true that on the water pump, and all the related activity, we did in fact end up with a rationale and a sunset date of, 6/30/25, if I recall correctly?
No, I have those as blanks, so,
Okay, so to Chris's point, and on the proposed fiscal year water operating budget, we don't do a sunset, but we do a rationale.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't recall that.
so
No.
as I recall, with the water pump at the well field, that's me, and that should be in there. I thought we'd given you that after the last meeting.
I keyed in everything I got.
Okay.
And
So anyways, we may have already had it filled in ourselves, but 6/30/25 as, Mark nodding his head, so that would be the sunset date, agreed? And then for the testing of the sites, who's gonna do the rationale? Okay, Ross will do the rationale, and then that would also have a 6/30/25.
26.
26.
Spread it out in case you can't get into someplace, so much better
Okay.
to go 2 years.
Oh, yeah, right, and plus it might be leftover funds, right, all that, okay, great. So is that good? We good on that? Okay.
All right, the next item is the proposed adoption of the proposed wetlands bylaw.
You guys, you did,
Yeah,
you guys did, we didn't.
and we do have our conservation agent and the chair of the Concom are both participated via Zoom.
So, discussion is what we need to do. Take care, guys.
Yep.
So does anybody want to further discuss this? Or are we going to go to a vote?
Did you decide that you are weighing in on this? I don't recall.
Yeah, we have decided, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah,
just didn't remember.
we are, that was, again, last week we discussed
Oh,
stuff.
oh, I wasn't invited to.
Yeah, well, you were certainly welcome. So anyways, if there's no further discussion.
Well, I just want to share a couple of things that I think are relevant. I know almost all of us attended the meeting the other night, so it was a long evening, a lot of information. I try to absorb as much as I can as a layman as to what was going on, and I just want to make a couple of comments that I think are relevant at the same time. One of them is that one of the, a local attorney, Barry Fogel, was made, I think, a few very good points. And this goes to your comment about cost, Robin. He said that there is the cost implication to town for litigation for applicants, abutters, and the town. Specifically, if the town council would need to represent the Conservation Commission in Superior Court. So, I think he made that comment. To me, that kind of resonated. It kind of makes sense. I think that's something that, we'll have to take into account in our vote. And then Michelle Green, I think also made a very good observation. Her point was that she doesn't believe that the new bylaw, as proposed, if it passes, will add significant time and cost to her role, which I think is also very important for us to consider in this whole thing. So I just want to, I have a whole page full of notes, but to me, relative to cost, those are two things that kind of came up in my mind during the discussion the other night. So I just want to share those with everybody, and that was a couple of my takeaways.
Anything else? You're still there, Dan, right?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so I didn't catch all of the meeting the other night. I ran into one of those dead zones that was dead for like 30 miles. But very informative meeting. Yeah, Barry Fogel, I thought, made some very pertinent points on the on the costs that the town could likely incur, like Jim had said. And Michelle had said that there was not going to be any additional costs. Michelle, maybe you could clarify one thing that I asked the other night, but I didn't write the answer down. Or I didn't recall it directly. I think you had said that you laid out the number when I asked about the smaller areas that you would be now enforcing these rules on the smaller wetland areas, the potential like vernal pools and the potential sites that would now be impacted by this more stringent set of guidelines that you're proposing, as opposed to what the state's Wetland Act proposes or has in its current state. I think you had said you'd overlaid maps to potential sites, and the number of sites was not a significant number that you would need to be enforcing. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I guess I don't want to say there's two ways to look at it because that sounds deceptive and that's not what I'm trying to do here. My enforcement is going to stay the same on every area that's still a Wetlands Protection Act area today because the bylaw recognizes all of those same areas. So including buffer zone, I already do enforcement in buffer zone. So that's not a change. The smaller ponds, so that 5,000 to 10,000 square foot, we didn't overlay anything. We looked at aerial maps on my map and we measured some of those out. I think we came about to a half a dozen or so of those, and about a half dozen or so vernal pools are in town. That's according to Mass Mapper from the state's data. So again, could one of those small ponds that's not listed as a vernal pool end up being a vernal pool? Perhaps, but that's about a dozen or so new resource areas. The small isolated wetlands, it's harder to put a key number on those, but most of what we see in the field are fairly small. And I would say smaller than 5,000 square feet. I have two projects that come to mind. One's probably about 3,000 square feet and the other one's 1,500 or so square feet. So those still wouldn't be jurisdictional under the bylaw. So I guess the point is that the chances that there would have to be enforcement on a resource area that is only jurisdictional to the bylaw is very, very low. Chances are really good that the enforcement's going to be on something that's jurisdictional under both the State Wetlands Protection Act today and the bylaw because there is so much overlap. I don't know if that answers it. Did I go off target?
No, I think the net that I got from that is there's about a dozen potential spots that the bylaw would come into play for enforcement as opposed to the general Mass Wetlands Act.
Sure, and I would caveat that with one thing we didn't do, but considering topography of land and how these things form, a lot of those, that dozen that we just mentioned of the new resource areas are probably already in buffer zone. So again, if you're out there, say, I don't know, say you clear cut a whole area because you're planning to build a house or you want to do a yard expansion, and maybe there is a vernal pool there, or one of those really small ponds, chances are there's also wetlands around and also buffer zones. So again, I say a very small likelihood that there's going to be unique enforcement where it's purely under the bylaw only.
Okay, so it sounds like you're already enforcing it as a buffer zone, if I understand what you're saying.
Yes, yep.
And it's not necessarily something that you would need the bylaw to enforce.
Wrong. So I am enforcing, yeah, so
okay.
that's a great point. And I didn't mean to say wrong, like, gotcha. That's a great point. So buffer zone is a resource area. It's not a resource area. It's a regulated area under the Wetlands Protection Act today. So if you do work today in a buffer zone and you don't have a permit under the Wetlands Protection Act and it's not an exempt activity, yes, enforcement. the change with the bylaw is that the commission's able to issue fines. I can't issue fines for anything today, whether it's Wetlands Protection Act jurisdictional, only today without the bylaw, like I can't issue fines on that. So what happens is, you know, some of the compliance can be pretty drawn out. So that's the big change. Yes, enforcement, but the enforcement is really in order to restore the area or in order to do after the fact filing if it's something the commission could permit. You know, the escalation really there is bringing Mass DEP on board. Mass DEP can issue fines. They can issue fines up to $25,000 a day. I've brought them into 2 pretty significant cases and they haven't taken any action aside from affirming that we were right to enforce.
Okay.
And I
Um,
suppose I should add that the commission could litigate, but not on their own. The commission would have to go to select board and essentially be asking for town council support to litigate under a criminal or civil matter. So that is a third option that I don't know if it's ever been done in town. It hasn't been done since I'm here.
all right, so for the 2 examples that you said would be applicable, you haven't chosen to go litigate those either.
One of
That-
them's a pretty political project, so I don't know if that would be
Okay.
supported for litigation.
Okay, I don't know
Mhm.
the 2 items you're talking
course.
about, so I'm just asking
Yeah.
the question. Okay. All right, and then at the end of the meeting, you guys changed the fine structure, or I believe you changed that. Is that accurate?
Yes, we didn't change the structure. We did have conversation about potentially changing the structure. And what we ran into is that it was going to be really complicated to try to do enforcement that way. And it kind of created, Barry Fogel pointed out, this gray area, right? Is violation 1, the first day of violation, and then maybe they pay the $100 fine, they fix the area, and then in a year, they do another violation. Is that violation number 1 for them or violation number 2? And it just kind of opens up some gray areas. So what we did do is reduce that fine of $300 per day down to $200 per day to try to bring it down closer on par with what some of the other communities in the area have been doing.
Okay. Yeah, so I did hear that correctly. I guess one question is that Barry brought up. Maybe it wasn't Barry that brought this up, but one of the things that was rattling around in the back of my head was why not a tiered fine structure as opposed to just the flat fine structure?
I
There
think
was,
that's what I just spoke to, the complications in trying to manage a tiered fine structure. That's what the commission discussed and chose not to do.
so what's the discussion that wasn't shared during the meeting the other night? What's the complications of having a tiered fine structure? Seems like
Right.
it's pretty straightforward. You put A, B, C, or D as to the tiers. You fall into 1, 2, or 3, and then you issue the fine.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. So when you say tier, are you saying the $100, $200, $300, like somehow the other communities did? Or are you talking about tiering in a different way?
No, you could tier it in that way. I think still the tier structure that you have proposed,
There's
where
no
it's,
tier structure.
excuse me, still the fine structure that you have proposed of being issued at $200 a day, $1,400 a week versus the $2,100 a week, doesn't make a lot of difference, I don't think, in the penalty.
Yeah.
I think that it's still pretty onerous for any of the residents in town that do something and they get fined for some reason. It seems like it's pretty heavy-handed still.
Mhm.
And if the intent was to have a heavy penalty for somebody with deep pockets or a commercial developer, I would propose that you add a tiered structure for a resident, single individual or single homeowner versus a commercial enterprise, and go about a tiered structure that way, so that you could possibly have higher fines for the commercial enterprise that's not adhering to the guidelines of the bylaws, and that way you're not so onerous on the residents of town. Generally, they're going to make very few, or I think one woman said she's looking for some help to understand the complicated issues, because it is complicated.
Mhm.
So I mean, was that ever discussed or?
We did discuss that, not at last night's meeting. That was discussed. That's discriminatory. We can't persecute a developer different than a resident. Just like the building code doesn't have a different fine structure for someone that puts on a deck without, getting a building permit versus someone that builds a house without a permit. You can't pick and choose.
Is that an opinion from town council, or are you just saying that that's discriminatory?
It's not an opinion from town council.
All right, so that's not necessarily a true statement.
And also, you could leave out the conversation of whatever entity's doing it, but you could focus on certain things that are more egregious no matter who does it. So it doesn't have to be a discussion between commercial versus personal. It can be how bad is the thing?
Right.
How bad is it to clean up? Did it cause stuff downstream, whatever? So I think the whole question of tiering is what's being raised, and that clearly isn't part of the bylaw.
I mean, I think everybody knows that I'm vociferously opposed to the bylaw. There's countless reasons that come to mind. I think it's unfair to put the burden of litigation on homeowners. I think that the increase in the buffer zone will encroach on human activity, and I can't put salamanders above humans, which was a big talking point in the meeting. They talked about how this town has notoriously clay-rich soils and how rainfall is increasing. So you would think what that means is that we're going to be subject to increasing wetlands in areas that might not normally be wet. So you would think that we would want less stringent setbacks versus more stringent because we have an unnaturally undraining terrain, if you will. But it doesn't seem to make sense for a town that has a lot of clay, unless we're in the business.
Can we go back to the fines before we start talking about geology at the moment?
My thoughts on it, so I'm gonna
Okay.
finish. It doesn't make sense to me in a town that has clay-rich soil that we, are we trying to create wetland or are we trying to preserve the existing wetland? Because it's not so much about what the town looks like today, it's what is it gonna look like in perpetuity? How is the climate gonna change? How is the land gonna change? And how much is the jurisdiction of Concom gonna change? They're gonna be the judge and jury over all these cases. They say, oh, well, it's not, they wouldn't get fined in that case. That's assuming that you immediately stop what you're doing and restore the area as they're directed. If you disagree with them, you will be getting fined, not once, not twice, until you go to court, presumably. So, obviously I feel strongly about it, but I know people in town that are dealing with Concom and are having a very hard time with them over things that are not egregious violations. So I just think it's a mistake it's very heavy-handed. I mean, I've been told that like nobody's driving, tractors through the wetlands. There's no bulldozers going through habitat for the most part, right? This is about homeowners. This is about people's property maintenance, mowing lawns, clearing out bittersweet. And, like Dan said at the end of his comments, it's a very heavy-handed structure and there's no recourse to elected officials. The only recourse is Concom or litigation. So.
I was struck by the fact that there was even discussion about a governmental agency talking about mowing lawns on someone's private property. That I couldn't even believe that was even being discussed, or cutting back some invasive brushes or that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that I think, if in the wrong hands, could become heavy-handed.
Those kinds of activities are already regulated under they're right now under the state law. That's not a bylaw change.
But this is over and above that, right?
Yeah, but not those kinds of activities. Yeah.
So can I speak to the fines? And I think the point about tiering the fines as to the egregiousness of the offense, what we've seen is that if someone has, say their project is contributing a lot of sedimentation to an intermittent stream, if that continues to happen, it becomes more and more egregious, and that's why the fines go daily. Because if they don't, and oftentimes there's maybe a very simple solution that's going to cost them far less than the fines to prevent that sedimentation. So if they just take action to, shore up their erosion control, their fines will not continue because they're showing that they have good faith and they're trying to prevent the violation. I think my overall impression of the meeting was that people just don't understand what's being regulated right now. And so a lot of people are up in arms because they think suddenly everything is going to be regulated and they're going to be fined, whereas most of the points they're bringing up are already regulated. The continued discussion about section, what is it, Michelle?
Consultants.
About consultants just showed that, I think those folks just didn't understand what a consultant is, and that any project that you need to have permitted, like any building project you're going to do, you're going to have a licensed plumber or electrician doing it, just like any work that's going to be in the wetlands needs a wetland scientist and an engineer to stamp a plan. Those are not the consultants we're talking about when we're looking at getting a consultant for a large complex project. Those are consultants you would have anyway. So I think there's just a lack of knowledge about what's allowed in the wetland currently. And I think a lot of people's first education about what's allowed comes from a violation. It might come from an enforcement order. And that has never been something that we would find to begin with. We use that as a method to educate the public. People are maybe needing to permit something after the fact, after they've done it. Or if they've done something completely without knowing, we don't expect people to understand the entire Wetlands Protection Act because it's 300 pages long. That's why we have an agent to go out and make sure that the public's welfare is being considered in any project that is happening in a buffer zone or in a resource area. So if Michelle goes out, gives somebody some education, usually that activity is mitigated or stopped and it doesn't go any further. So I think we're spending a lot of time talking about fines, whereas I think, as we've tried to demonstrate, it's really an unusual circumstance where we would be employing fines. Most people are once they understand what they're doing and what they need to do to come into compliance, I would say 95% of the time they're willing to act in good faith to come back into compliance. And it's often not that hard.
And
I think-
if I could, there's a few things that I just want to go on, off what Molly said, and then just a couple of comments, I don't know who made them as we've all been speaking, that just maybe there's a few inaccuracies there. So I just want to clear them up, going to Molly's points on consultants. She's absolutely right. The consultants that we're talking about, they're peer reviewing on behalf of the Conservation Commission on a complex project. So they're looking at the information that an applicant's engineer and wetland scientist has already provided, similar to when planning board engages with Meridian to look at stormwater reports and calculations for a project. So the applicant's engineer that they've hired, that they've selected, that they choose to work with has already prepared all that documentation, but there's an expert who's an engineer and understands stormwater calculations to that level to make sure that what's being proposed isn't going to have any impacts to any other homeowners. The other comment I wanted to make was just about wetlands changing. They do change over time. That's why, You know, I don't think it came up at this last meeting, but in conversations throughout the years, people have suggested, why doesn't the Conservation Commission or the state make one definitive wetlands map and show the definitive edges of all of the wetlands in town or in the state? They do change over time. They get bigger and smaller. If you have a wetland and there's a beaver dam and the beaver population leaves, the dam decomposes and gets blown out in a storm, that wetland is going to shrink. And if in time no beavers come back, that wetland the soils are going to weather, the plants are going to change, that edge is going to be smaller than what it once was. But wetlands also get bigger too. They get bigger because of human impacts sometimes. Maybe there's a roadway that went in with an undersized culvert and now an area that drains differently. But it's not instant. So when you have, like last summer, and it was really wet and we had multiple really big heavy rainstorms, and maybe you saw areas in your yard or around town and they were holding water and they never used to. Why is my lawn dying? Why is there puddles? Those aren't wetlands. It takes time for the soils to weather and age and have chemical processes and bacterial processes underdone to them, where you can look at the soil and say, this is a wetland soil. It takes time for wetlands plants to grow. It takes time for that shift to happen. So when you delineate a wetland, you're not just going out on a wet day or after a whole wet summer and being like, yes, it's wet here. This is a wetland. You're going out and you're looking at 3 parameters: the soils, the plants, and the hydrology. And if you don't have all 3, that area is not a wetland. And as far as them changing over time, we're seeing the impacts now. So I hear the frustration, and it's not lost on me, right? I get it. We're trying to all live together. We're trying to coexist with other people, the environment, animals, a changing climate. It's a lot. But what we're seeing roadways that are built really close to rivers and ponds and wetlands, and they're flooding, they're undermining. We're seeing culverts that were put in undersized. Maybe they did have permits, but maybe they weren't reviewed thoroughly. They're getting blown out during storms, and it's costing taxpayers and residents thousands upon thousands of dollars to fix these issues. There's houses that were permitted in the late 80s and early 90s. They had wetlands permitting done. They complied with the Wetlands Protection Act. They were in the buffer zone only, but they're only 10, 15, 20 feet off the edge of the wetland. Those wetlands have gotten bigger. And now these people have flooding basements. They have lawns that are dying. They have mold in their house. I can't guarantee that's from a wetland, but that's a complaint I've gotten. By not allowing a new house to go 25 feet off a wetland, 50 feet off a wetland, not allowing a new road to go 25 or 50 feet off a wetland, you're looking out for the future residents. I get it. It feels restrictive, but it's a community benefit. It's better for everyone to not have to pay to replace this infrastructure in 50 years. And that's what this is trying to do, because we know wetlands get bigger and we know that we're facing all of these different weather patterns. It's going to continue to happen. That's what this bylaw is looking out for, is the residents.
So can I just make a comment, Rob?
Oh, sure.
I didn't know if you were about to close this up. I agree that ignorance is probably a big part of the issue, because obviously normal people don't read the bylaws. But I also think that there's a presumption in general throughout society that rules are going to be implemented reasonably. If a building inspector walks into a house and a stud is off of the line it's supposed to be on by 6 inches, the inspector knows the house is gonna fall down, so he doesn't make the builder relocate the stud. If a police officer sees somebody goes through a 35-mile-an-hour zone and he's going 37, he doesn't pull the person over, because he knows that 2 miles an hour over isn't going to improve roadway safety. If you are within a few points of the law, generally speaking, mission accomplished. And I think that most people in town feel like Concom is a commission that doesn't view the world like that. If something happens 5 feet into the buffer zone, are you guys gonna fine somebody $200 a day, or are you guys gonna cut them some slack? You can say whatever you want, but my belief is, and my experience with people in town is, that it's black or white. There are 2 colors. And that's the way that this law is going to be interpreted. And for that reason, I am very much opposed to it.
Could I have one comment on that and one comment on an earlier item? you know, as far as enforcement, I hear the concerns, right? The concerns are, in the past, the commission might have been very unwavering, and in the future, we have no idea who the commission and the agent will be, and that's scary. But I will say that this commission and how things have been enforced has been very education focused. So these comments that, you know, the commission's coming out heavy-handed, you're 5 feet in the buffer zone, you cut a tree, you had no idea, and now, I don't know, whatever this terrible, scary thing is happening, that's not what's happening, that's not what's been happening. I send a letter, the letter says, hello, I've observed violations, or what appears to be violations. Did you know we have a Wetlands Protection Act? This is the act, this is the regulations. Come into a Concom meeting. And it's as simple as that for, like Molly said, the majority of the issues that happen. And just a comment on litigation, I know Barry talked a lot and Mark Dickinson talked a lot about appeals and having to litigate. That's only on a decision of the Conservation Commission that's different from a decision that would be made under the Wetlands Protection Act. That still appeals to DEP. And regarding litigation today, enforcement orders today don't appeal to Mass DEP. So if the commission issues an enforcement order, say they send a violation letter, things don't get better, we're trying education, we're trying to find common ground, we're trying to help, it's not getting better, wetlands are impacting. We issue an enforcement order, we require, say, restoration for an area, and someone wants to appeal that, today, the only place they can appeal that to is to Superior Court. So there's really no difference in my mind that if something was, it's big enough a violation to issue a fine, it's a big enough a violation to issue an enforcement order. Either way, you're going to court over it. There is no appealing that enforcement order to Mass DEP. So there is no change there.
Okay, what I'm gonna say now is that unless we have questions that we need for edification, we're gonna proceed to the vote. Is that fine? Dan, you there?
I am here.
You okay with that? Dan? Are you
Yeah.
okay with?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm okay
Yeah.
going to a vote. Michelle, I just want to say before we go into the vote, Rob, just one thing. Michelle, thank you for your efforts here to help us understand it. I think I totally agree with the town doesn't understand it. And the way that the bylaw is written, like I said, it's very heavy-handed. It mentions the fines. It doesn't focus, or at least I didn't glean anything about education first. You get a first chance to get a pass at it until you get fined. If that's how you operate, which it sounds like it is, and I have no reason, I'm not questioning that. It should state that in the bylaw, because what's in the law and the bylaw is going to last with us for a long time. If your practice is to do education first and make it a situation where you can teach somebody about how to preserve the environment, we should say that in the law, not focus on the fines. So that is my feeling as to how the bylaw should be added. And the fact that we're talking about maybe a dozen sites that it could impact, seems like we're talking about a lot of things, or we're talking about a lot of different items that are getting thrown into it for a small amount of areas, if I understood your description.
So again, if someone
Thank
has a
you.
question, that they need answered, otherwise, and Jim, you started to ask something.
Yeah, my question is how did the select board vote on this issue, on this bylaw?
3-0 and support.
And support?
Well,
Make a comment on that?
yeah.
I'm not
clarify.
necessarily in favor of it, but I think this is, I wanted to put it forward so the town has a fair chance for all the voters to vote on it, so.
So, okay, so are we ready to vote? Okay, so listen up, Dan, you there?
I am here.
Good, okay, thank you. So we're gonna take this in reverse order, so pay attention. It's getting late. Reverse order means we're gonna take no votes first.
You need a motion first.
Well, okay, the motion is to adopt the wetland bylaw. Okay, so we've got a motion. Thank you, Jim. So, thank you, Jim. So,
Need a second too.
yeah, okay. And
Better learn version of me. Come on, much better.
Is there a second?
That's fine.
And second. Okay. So we're going to now proceed to a vote. We're gonna go no votes first. All those that are voting no, please raise your hand or speak if you're remote.
No,
So we have 3 no votes. Okay, everybody agreed, and we've done it in a proper sort of process. All those in favor of the wetlands bylaw? So there's 2 in favor, 3 against. So, whoever does the rationale has to promise to be even-handed about it.
Ross did it.
Well, I'm looking directly at Rob, but,
Well, that's a mistake, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
what?
I would offer to, but I'm already behind in mine.
Yeah, no, I'm actually asking Ross if, in writing rationale, it could be even-handed and speak to, for instance, the fact that there is an issue with enforcement without fines. I'm not saying that you should disagree with yourself, but it would be appropriate, I think, with a 3-2 vote.
Yeah.
To say pluses and minuses. It's a very simple thing.
Well,
The def-
I write it up and then you get.
Yeah, great, good. But, I'm asking because I'm trusting you can actually do that, but it's all about pluses and minuses.
I think Dan wants to volunteer.
He's got a hand up, I can see it.
yeah, I mean, I'm glad to help with the rationale after someone takes a stab at it.
Right. So,
I'm-
but Ross and Dan and I will do it, thank you very much. So we'll do it, but Ross has the headline on this, he's the assignee.
He's got
Is
the
that good
byline,
enough?
is that what you say he's got the byline, is that what you said?
Thank you.
So when is this all due? Like tomorrow?
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Well, yeah, probably.
Okay.
When do you need it in?
Yes.
So,
He's
well,
going on vacation. I mean, come
That's
on.
What, vacation time?
Oh,
Angus, going on vacation.
15?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know it was the 15th to go on vacation.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Give the guy a break. Come on.
So I've known for a while I was gonna be working all weekend to leave town Monday.
Monday.
I hope not to be working Sunday. If I have to, I will, but
So tomorrow is the drop dead.
I gotta do my
Tomorrow's
taxes.
the drop dead day.
That
You gotta do your,
Monday is fine. I'm gonna be working till.
no.
No, let's not.
Hang it, hang
Yeah,
it. No.
the thing is, once I get a draft, it's gonna be back and forth, so I think that's good. Yeah, I think drop dead tomorrow.
Yeah, right, exactly. We're all in agreement, I think.
There's always gonna be some
Yeah.
wordsmithing, so that gives Saturday for some back and forth.
Right,
which is
we're all in
kind of-
agreement.
Yeah.
We're all in agreement.
My last 2
So
tomorrow.
what's the quickest been used recently, violent?
But we're all in violent again. I wasn't gonna use that again. I use it, I know. It was appropriate. I'm glad you said it though. I use it once a week.
first usage, I'm not.
It was great the other meeting we had. Okay, so
All right.
Wendy, are we on a good side now or everything copacetic?
If you get your stuff in, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So tomorrow's the drop dead date. So, by the way, we're gonna go on to by the way, Michelle and Molly, thank you very much. Appreciate this a lot. I think you've spoken as well as you can to this complex issue. Okay, bye, both gone.
Obviously, this one doesn't.
Still here, thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Molly.
Right, yeah, no sense.
No sense.
No financial.
So, after we do the revote on Article 48, which is the next item up, were you intending to then go through those things that go to the next 3 things actually go to the annual meeting? So maybe the FinCom would sit here, no?
It's up to you.
I think that'd be great, that'd be
I
fine.
think so.
Stick
So
with it.
what I'm
I'm just
asking,
confused what you mean.
so go to F, go to G, go
G and
to.
H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
the
think
next
it'd be great
item-
to have FinCom, included for H. on
Those 3 things.
Okay, but you decided you're not voting on the bylaws, right?
I'm gonna find out.
But we still wanna,
I understand that, but I'm just clarifying, you voted to not weigh in on the animal bylaw and the hunting bylaw? Okay. Okay. I mean, my thought is this should be concise. We've done a lot of listening. I don't want to spend a lot of time on these. So if you guys are planning on discussing, I want to know.
well, the third one, like confirm location. you know,
That's
okay.
definitely, yeah.
Okay, so can we go on to the Article 48? That's a resounding yes.
I think that's the next item on the agenda.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all,
I wanna move through this quickly. I told Dan 8 o'clock and we could go home.
all right.
What are we looking at? I didn't see a number or.
So this was an article that Angus had originally proposed for continuing support to the MBTA consultant. You know, after this went to the state, they would be in place if we needed more money because the grant funding would run out. And then we decided, or, you know, we voted to withdraw that article. But given that the planning board is no longer bringing this forward and we have potentially the citizens petition, we thought that it might be appropriate to reconsider this, have a consultant on hand to evaluate the 40R process, maybe make some recommendations about whether that will comply, will satisfy the MBTA requirements, and if we want to start doing something with Mullen, but that way it would be in our control instead of a citizen's petition that it's just, you know, we don't know who's going to control it.
Yeah, but if they both pass, you'd have the $100,000 that they got, plus what would be a fund on this.
Well, that's why I was saying, Baker said that he would move no action. If the select board is already doing something along those lines, he's willing
Okay,
to.
you say make it,
Yeah,
Would need assurance on that.
he said it last night at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting,
okay.
and I have it on tape.
Roll it.
Do you want to go into?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the reason I drafted this in the first place, hopefully the article rationale or the article form kind of speaks for itself. Because the mandate's there, the town has to either comply or fall out of compliance 18 months from now or 20 months from now. So, having no consulting support it's not that we can't do anything ourselves. We have a lot of expertise. We have some, we have very, very talented town planner, but these programs are very technical. There's a lot of, state bureaucracy. And so I think, it was taken off the warrant, but I think that I've had a lot of experience with 40R. I was a consultant. I did a lot of them. I was actually on the state regulation committee for 40R back when I was a town planner. So I've really been involved with that policy since its inception in some ways. And it is a very intriguing policy. It does offer, I think, some potential benefits relative to the MBTA communities for a couple of reasons. It has some more flexibility. It allows for sub-districts and some more like targeted zoning as opposed to 15 units an acre. You can have sub-districts of 8, 12, and 20. You could have one that's all 8. So I think from a land planning standpoint, it does give some tools to the town that as a former town planner are more adept than MBTA communities, which is just a blanket 15 units per acre. So, I brought it up with Wendy a week or so ago, just thinking, I think it's worth the conversation of do we want to explore that? And if we do, there's one avenue is this isn't petition, which is very focused on a single site or really 2 sites, Soldier Sailors or Mullen. And, but if you looked at 40R and you had, and I want to be clear, the state has said very clearly in writing that a 40R district, even though it doesn't actually match the required densities for the MBTA communities, will be considered compliant. You'd have to show the same number of unit count, 87 future zoned units. But theoretically, that could be done on a scattered site basis around the town, which in the aggregate would meet this rather than a single site or so.
But also, this could be useful, what you're proposing could be useful irrespective of the MBTA communities.
I think so. There's lots of towns who've done it because it matches their policy, their land use policy.
Right,
Yeah.
so this is money that, we might be focusing on, what the citizen petition is, but this is a thing whose time may have come irrespective. Because it allows you to start looking at other things in other ways.
Yeah, that's not my decision to make. There's
No,
definitely
but-
people, I definitely think it's an idea that's, it was talked about back in 09 with the Mullen property, the 40R was talked about back then. So I think, when the question was asked to the consultant many months ago as to whether Mullen property would count toward MBTA, and the consultant basically said no, but it's not a hard no. what it is the state's not gonna recognize town-owned land until it's to a degree of realness. And that's gonna include the town meeting voting to authorize its disposition. It's gonna include in all likelihood the select board issuing an RFP, and they haven't said this clearly, but I think I have a strong expectation. They would require actually a purchase and sale agreement in place with the developer before the state is gonna view it as a bona fide zone site. So that's a lot to get done by December 31st, 2025. I think the consultant basically said no, because for their scope and budget, that wasn't gonna happen. But they don't know the 15 years of history with Mullen, and it's not impossible. It would require a huge amount of focus and a huge amount of effort between, April and next December. But it is, the state said 40R will be recognized, and the public land under certain circumstances can be recognized. So I just thought before the warrant closes, it's worth the discussion. And I think if one thing that in the discussion last night with the Affordable Housing Trust, there was some nuance to the idea of either passing over with no action or one thing that was discussed last night is could a subset of the citizen petition be brought forward? Could a motion be brought forward that some but not all of the citizen petition? One ingredient of the citizen petition, which is actually quite powerful, is it would declare the land surplus and authorize the select board to go forward with an RFP. So potentially, if there was a motion to do that and not do the funding, maybe doing the funding in a different way, that's a big step in the process. Because a question was asked last night by one of the trust members, Derek, was saying, does the town really want to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get zoning in place for the Mullen property, only to then go to town meeting, let's say like next spring, and have town meeting vote to reject making it available for housing? And he's right. Like, I don't think that would necessarily be a smart idea. Getting that vote potentially on April 29th to authorize it for disposition, that's an enormous step in the process. So if that could be accomplished by the citizen petition article.
Can you modify it to that level?
Yeah.
As long as it's within the four corners of the article, I do have, it's gotta be printed in the warrant exactly as
Yeah.
submitted, because you have the signatures, but a motion can be anything within the four corners of the article.
And that is within
So if you're gonna do that within the article, if you could just eliminate the other stuff,
Yeah.
you could reduce the funding to whatever level you would need for this. You wouldn't need the two articles conflicting.
The only issue there is that the article is hyper-focused on Mullen and Soldiers and Sailors, and I do think that would be part of it. But if there was a separate article, you could put things on the table, like the All Saints Church site. We've known, they've been very vocal for years there, they'd love to.
Well, that's what I meant
develop
about
them.
flexibility.
That could be a 40R sub-district
Right.
that could gain,
Right. So-
6 or 8, or whatever the number
Right,
is.
so this would allow you to look at things like you just mentioned.
Correct.
That's what I like about this. I think we need to kickstart, this is like the water exploration. It's very similar. You need someone that can listen to just some of these ideas and go back and say, well, we could pursue this, we could pursue that. I also agree with you, the state, when they go through new stuff, like 3A, they stop finding things that, well, we'll handle it this way. That should be okay. We're convinced now that you can actually do that. We're not resisting it. So I think this, putting aside the citizens petition, I think I'd rather focus on this.
But you can't put it aside. They both play with each other. Because if you're
Well, he's
gonna fund
withdrawing
this,
it.
no, you just said to reword it to allow you to declare Mullen surplus.
Yeah, he actually did bring up last night, talk about withdrawing it or rewording it. We reminded him you can't.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's not
Okay,
just
I
as it's signed,
understand.
so it has to go in the printed warrant exactly as is.
Right.
But a motion, and that he was very amenable to that idea.
But do you wanna commit to that idea without having done this?
Yeah, why not? I mean,
I don't think you need this, because he can say the Mullen and whatever the number is, and I think the two would be a problem, wouldn't it?
no.
Well, the only thing with the way his is written is it's just, you're just looking at Mullen and Soldiers of Salem.
And it's the density of 80 units. I mean, it's a,
Yeah, yeah.
One, yeah,
So Wendy, what's,
single occupancy.
so,
yeah.
Well, that's not gonna work, and he understands that now. and he
So,
was-
so the
he
other thing that
understands
was discussed last night is Springtown meeting, maybe, I mean, yeah, next spring, May 25, if we have two proposals, voters are asked to choose for the MBTA as proposed by the planning board or this. Sometimes it's easier to make a choice of either or than
Yeah.
zoning or not zoning.
so I'm gonna, Wendy, what is your path that you see as best right now? Both go and one gets modified on the town meeting floor and the other is as Angus has proposed it?
Yeah.
That's the best path.
I think that's the best.
Okay, well, Angus, I didn't ask Angus because I think that's exactly
Yeah.
what you were describing.
Yeah, I am a little hesitant sitting here tonight in terms of what's the right amount. Because I do know from, you know, my consulting, I have an idea of what it used to cost to do a 40R. And that's something I made this point clearly last night, and everyone needs to understand it. The MBTA zoning is one program, the 40R is a different program. So it's not like the MBTA zoning bylaw that's been drafted would necessarily like be a starting point. You really would be starting from scratch because 40R is a very different
Right,
program. So while there might be some efficiencies, you're really looking at it, like, it's not gonna be cheap, is my point.
Well, to
get
that,
this out,
Angus.
to help with that.
So, okay, going back to what we just discussed. Rich's article now doesn't need 100,000.
No, it won't be.
Right, so
Under
what,
this plan, it will be $0.
yes,
Right.
$0.
That's right.
So why wouldn't we just take an amount up to 100,000
Yep,
and just say, it all comes together, it's explainable. We're pursuing the citizens petition in this way, we're using the funding to something that will be a little easier to get more comprehensive throughout town. It'll take up other things as well as,
Mhm.
would that be a way to proceed? I mean,
yeah,
what
and
dollars
I
have
do
you
think,
got?
I think Rich picked 100 out of thin air. You know, I don't think it would be that much.
I'd like it to be less than 100.
Yeah, I
It's
would
fine.
very much.
All I'm
like
saying,
that.
all I'm saying is,
So
That's
you're
gone away.
that You'd like it to be less than 100, because why?
Because of the optics of it. I mean, if we're really making a different article, we
Yeah.
don't want it to be the same.
no, I wasn't saying it should be 100, I was saying
It's
up to 100, like 75, I mean 50.
Yeah, so Chris asked the question, what's it cost so far? The total grant amount was 75,000. It's not all been spent, but it's largely been spent. Roughly, I forget the amount paid at Howard, it was $5 or $6 grand for the water piece, so that was carved out. So I think the contract with Dotson and Flinker was on the order of, call it 67, give or take.
Right.
And I think as of a recent bill they sent, they billed probably 90+% of that, so. You know, I think 75,000 is
Right.
probably,
Right.
you know,
It's probably still
ballpark,
high, 'cause you don't
especially.
know the design criteria at this point. I mean, you're just looking at site.
But MBTA has one statutory framework for design guidelines, 40R has a different.
But that doesn't have to get done within the context of this article at this point. It'd just be to decide
Well,
what sites and.
No, to bring zoning to town meting,
Yeah, we have
you'd
to
be
satisfy.
drafting the bylaw, and there's a pre-approval process with the state. It's a, you know, multi-step process, and if we were intending for this article to also, cover the legal fees associated with bylaw reviews, I think 75, I wouldn't want to go less than that.
This is a really important thing to do, because we've been talking about housing forever and a day.
Mhm.
And I know we've got MBTA on the table, but we all know that, you know, that's one thing. Pursuing something like this, I think is exciting.
Mhm.
And if you say 75, I mean, I like this idea, I like that amount of money, so, go ahead.
Just real quick one. Which town body do we envision overseeing this? Is it gonna be planning board, your office, Angus? Is it gonna be affordable housing trust?
I
Like,
think
who's gonna be the eyes of the town on this study? or just
I
one?
mean, I'm envisioning Angus would take the lead
With
on
the
it.
select board,
Yeah.
yeah, with the select
Okay.
board and this.
Yeah.
The Affordable Housing Trust is only affordable, and
Yeah.
that's, this,
Yeah.
this partly will be affordable. but
Right.
not exclusive.
Right, exactly.
And that is, and tonight's not the night to go into all the kind of pros and cons of 40R, because there are pros and there are cons. I think if we do keep this on the article, I'd love to have that on for the 25th, where I can actually give a presentation on 40R and really give you guys more detail. But one of the clear pros is that under 40R, it's 20% affordable. Whereas under the MBTA, they've absolutely capped it at 10, the state house. So that's something that it is, well, it's still mixed income, still a lot of market rate. You're definitely getting significantly more affordable units under 40R than we could do under.
But again, this thing may not even end up competing with MBTA.
I think if
it would be good if it
MBTA stays on the books, unless there's some dramatic outcome with the state, with the litigation, if MBTA remains on the books, I think, you know, you have really two paths to comply.
Yeah.
Or to not, you know, third path is to not comply.
But is the intent to make it a Mullen potentially as the MBTA?
No, not necessarily.
As
potential.
But potentially as part of it, yeah, I think definitely that would be,
Which would be the disposition of the property as surplus, so that would be ideal if it worked that way, so I'm just saying that's.
yeah. I think so, I don't know.
Questions. Sailing and Soul just keeps getting brought into the equation. Why? I don't have any idea what this has to do with it.
That was Rich.
Rich put it in.
But it's got nothing to do with it. So
Well, because it's proximal to Mullen, he wanted that to be the whole zoning district, he was talking about veteran housing in there.
it's nuts. So
Oh,
Well, we did, yeah, maybe, we did, the architects a couple of years ago did do a sketch plan of 3 single room or single bedroom units in there that penciled out septic and parking, all of that still.
those won't be affordable at 800,000 a unit to build them, so that's useless.
But you can, as we've heard many times with the MBTA, you need to zone it, you don't need to see it built. So you could zone that for 3 units and you pick up 3 units, so.
Let me just read something on that. They're actually, it is gonna make it through the courts and Milton's gonna lose. I think that's pretty obvious. And they do expect you to have property that can actually be built. So I think they would say, no, that one doesn't count.
Absolutely.
The state's all over this and the
Yeah.
mandate is getting stronger, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and the mapping that was done, that was presented at one of their first workshops, I think last June, where they did all that base mapping. That was all toward excluding wetlands, excluding unbuildable, excluding steep slopes, like they narrowed the town down to a smaller number of sites based on things in the MBTA statute. So yeah, when people have said, oh, we could zone a shopping center, that is absolutely 100% wrong.
Yeah, they
in
talked
the-
about
in the
putting it
law.
on,
You can't do it, the state's not,
Yeah.
that's not gonna.
no, the
that's
state
not
made
gonna
that
be
very clear. I just,
Right,
the governor did.
yeah, it's gotta be developable
So
land.
let me do that. I'm gonna make a motion so we can move this along. I'm gonna move that we vote to expense up to $75,000 on Article 48 to explore the MBTA /affordable /40R project with one contingency. That this article gets placed after the citizens petition. That's my motion, and I think.
so do we need to vote to remove this article from being withdrawn? Or
Which
is it? So
I mean, you had
we-
withdrawn it,
We voted to withdraw this article, so I don't know if we need to vote to restore
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll make that part of
I
my,
think there's no harm in doing
Right,
that.
exactly.
I'll make that part of my motion to restore this article and to reword it to spend $75,000 for investigation of MBTA affordable and 40R housing on town parcels. And with this following.
On town parcel alone?
Only town parcel?
Thumbs up from Jim.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
Only town parcels?
That's not, we don't want to restrict it.
No, any parcel in town.
Well, town parcel.
I didn't say town hall, did I?
Right,
And that it has to follow the citizens petition on the warrant.
all right.
But Chris, doesn't the addition of MBTA communities kind of confuse the issue? Because we're not really
But you can look at Mullen for
Yeah,
MBTA.
right.
That's
Yeah,
the-
no,
that's the huge
and
benefit
the
I
state
see.
has said 40R will be recognized as meeting.
Yeah, you want the broadest, because you don't know, we can't, none of us can sit here and say what path this might actually take.
So I seconded it. So for discussion, what's your thinking on having it placed after the?
You wanna make sure.
Because if they sit there and go forward and Richie doesn't pull it, and they somehow vote $100,000 on this goofy plan, we just take no action on this. I'm not gonna fund it twice, that would be insane. You're presuming that everything is
We
gonna
as a
go.
select board have the option to not go ahead with it then.
I just think you make it follow, it's real easy logistically, if something doesn't go as planned.
Rick does make actually a really important point, and not that, might not change any minds, but it's an important point. Town meeting could appropriate those funds, that does not compel the select board to expend the funds, Mike and Karen used to remind us that all the time. Town meeting can vote to authorize the acquisition of land, it's the chief elected body that still has to.
But I don't wanna duke that out later on down the road.
I know,
But as far as the timing goes, if I understand correctly, he's gonna wanna know that we're gonna accomplish this.
Yeah, we'd rather have it.
So you may actually want it ahead of, so then everybody's comfortable with how it's gonna be. Cause once this passes, my guess is, no one's gonna vote for that anyways, but he's gonna want assurances that we're gonna do this so that he can cooperate with the rest
So
of
as
the.
Angus states, his motion will have to reduce the scope of his to allow disposition of Mullen property.
Right.
So that article is still gonna be, well, on the table.
Yeah,
I'm not,
Okay.
I'm not trusting 100,000 and 75,000 to get paid twice, I just think that's a dangerous concept.
but I think that's where what Rick's point is basically a safety net that,
But we could be duking it out here in 6 months over that. Are you gonna spend it or aren't you gonna spend it? Then you get 3 people arguing over something that would have been a non-issue. So
I think we're imagining.
I'm gonna stick with my motion as it is.
Imagining
You can vote it down if you don't like it.
Well, why don't you make the motion
Or you did.
without the contingency and then sort out where,
All right,
well, someone
All
else
in
can make
favor?
a motion.
If,
Oh.
motion is stated, no.
no, all right, do you wanna make the new motion? What he said.
I said what he said without the.
so restore article, which we're calling it 48 is not, but restore article number 48, up to 75, authorize up to 75,000 for MBTA zoning, affordable, and 40R.
Right, that's it.
All right, second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Absolutely not.
all right. Okay.
FinCom. Do we want to have any further discussion on this? Or
No.
are we, is there a motion? What? Okay, Dan.
He said no.
No, okay. Thank you, Dan.
I make a motion to replicate what Rick, just moved.
And do we have a second?
You could have gone with my motion.
Do we have a second? Dennis seconds. So we're gonna take a vote. All in favor? Raise your hand. And Dan did say aye, so that it's unanimous in favor. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You got rationales, sunset dates.
Yeah. Okay, so.
I'm happy to write something and I can run it through you.
Yeah, yeah,
See if I'll-
do it that way, because.
I'll just take the narrative that I put and condense it.
Right. And the sunset date,
Item
is.
26.
20, yeah, I would say June 30, 2026.
Yeah. Everybody agree? Good? Okay, thank you.
All right,
So I did think we would still wanna, hear what's going on with the dog and the hunting. The reason being is this, that,
the public meeting.
yeah, no, but I know, but also, we may have an opinion about those things that might inform your decision, that's all. Because you're making decisions about how to go forward with these, right?
Right, based on information gathered already. I mean, I wasn't looking to solicit new information, so I just want to preface our conversation with that, unless you all both feel like you need to have more conversation.
I mean, well, I don't need more, basically, I'm not gonna support either one of them, so.
That's my feeling too.
So,
Okay, So
Not that I
what,
don't support them, I think they need
I-
a little more development.
I think they need to be more nuanced. I think we need to draw other people into the conversation because to me, there are significant issues about usage of the land by the public and you hear from a certain part of the public. I think you don't hear from 90% of the public, and 90% of the public, there's some percentage of that will feel quite strongly otherwise. That's what I expect, and, you know, quite honestly, I'd like to hear from. So, you know, nobody currently hunts legally on that land, but I'd like to hear from some people who do hunt. Obviously, Ross spoke out, but I'd like to hear from other people and their perspective to some extent about viability of hunting on that land. And, you know, and where that would happen, and then we can intelligently decide or consider where they think is appropriate to hunt is a place we think is appropriate to hunt. And if the answer is there's no suitable location, then, you know, then I would.
so how do you envision that happening?
I think we need to make it public as we have with certain other things that this issue is in play. I mean, quite honestly, the first time it came up in a meeting, it was out of the blue as far as I was concerned. And I still don't feel as though it's adequately developed.
Which, both?
But
So it's a little confusing to me because we discussed in a meeting, we all agreed to move forward with it, so.
right,
is-
no, and I've thought about it considerably since then, and.
Well, that's
so-
a fair thing, that's one of the
Okay.
options that comes
Right.
up tonight, we
Right.
decided we don't wanna move forward, or we
Right.
decided we leave
Right.
it, so.
Right,
So
yeah,
let's take these individually,
okay,
that's,
sure. Yeah, I wasn't trying to kill the conversation.
Just one brief comment.
mhm.
I think both of these offer, to Rick's comments, both of these actually offer the ability for us to look at taking care of different constituencies. So for instance, very often with dogs, a great thing is the dog park, which could be part of the ongoing conversation, or to Rick's point, isn't there a site that might actually be the site that you can use? So I think both of these are great, but I think we need to look a little bit more towards how we could actually take care of different constituencies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really frustrating for me because we've been talking about this dog situation for 3 years.
That one's different.
So should we talk about them separately?
Yeah, I
or-
think you have to separately.
Okay, so
My
the first one
comments-
up is the dog one.
Yeah, the
Okay.
animal control officer has asked for assistance on how to solve this problem.
Mhm.
So if that is the solution, I'm fine with it, but I think moving forward, we need to get someplace on town land to have a dog park.
Did you see the one that I outlined in here on Dunfield? It's the last page of this, there's that little, you know, the cornfield.
Yeah, no, I
That
saw
could be the
that.
hunting field too, so
Yeah.
that'd be fun. But somebody got it.
Not mutually, you can probably make money.
I
But-
think they're pretty mutual.
You know,
I would be in favor of
If the
going,
school is still looking to raise funds, maybe we could use their.
All right,
let the
okay.
kids go out at lunchtime.
Right.
No, I would be in favor of the dog bylaw, but going forward, I think we have to address a dog park, whether it's in a specific location or specific times of day. That's a whole nother discussion. So
I know, and I don't
I'm
want to
happy
be
to move
responsible for that.
forward. I'm happy, I'll even make the motion to move forward the animal bylaw as proposed.
So did you see what Angus just pulled
And
up?
I'm just doing
I
a
don't have
short
the
screen for the
binoculars.
people who are remote.
So this is the Dunfields, that
Yeah.
used to be a cornfield, you could just put a gate across, the trail goes to the edge of it, but there's really no other
So
use.
that's not part of this article, is it?
No, but I'm just saying, you asked about a potential
Oh, no,
property.
I'm saying,
and I
there's
said
many
that's-
properties in town you could do it. That's a great one, because you have parking right here, it's easy.
Right,
That's the next step, and I
Yeah.
think you could maybe explain that at the town meeting,
Mhm.
that this isn't an exclusionary process. So I made the motion to move the bylaw, and you second.
okay, as proposed,
Yes.
because we do have changes that were recommended, including from the animal control officer, increasing the fines. There was another one, Somebody said instead of a fixed physical leash, you should specify if you mean retractable instead of leaving it up to there.
Those are the comments that people put in. But if you start going to do that and rewrite what we have out for the.
These are two changes that I thought were substantive that came up. The animal control officer said $8 a day is not adequate to board a dog, which we asked.
We
her.
changed that previously.
No, it's not in the one as proposed.
But I think it had come up and we'd look into it
It was
further.
40, she said some other number that that's.
35 a day, she said, correct,
Yeah.
that's what they do in the report.
Yeah.
I
So-
thought that got changed in the
No.
proposed one.
No, we just kept the original as proposed. So I would, if you want to do this, I would add that one and I would clarify the retractable leash and I think that would be good. Unless you don't want to incorporate any.
No, I can, it just gets a little sloppy. I'm happy to incorporate both those as Wendy just articulated.
All right,
So you're allowing retract.
no,
No. We can ask you a question on retractable. What's the problem with that as long as they tell it to their owner? What is that?
because if they're 50 feet away from their owner, they're not under control.
Well, I was thinking the retractable, most of them I see are like 10 feet.
It just
long. That's what I did.
introduces an element of gray.
Right, no, I get that. But if it's 50 feet long and it's that far away, yeah, I can see the problem.
Yeah. All right, all right, so second, any further discussion? Anybody else in FinCom want to comment briefly? No?
So again, this 3.7 is now gonna be, did you say $45 instead of
I don't,
$8?
her email is, I have a note to myself, it's on page 138. There were two numbers that she had.
It was 40, but maybe I'm nuts.
Yeah, $40 during business hours and $50 after hours.
No, that was the.
Pick up and shelter, and then the shelter fee is $35
Okay.
a day per animal.
So is that what we put in the section 3.7, we put in $35 per day?
Yeah, so these are in addition, it's 35 a day plus 40 to pick up. So your charge for them to go pick up your dog is.
Right, yeah,
$35.
that's essentially your fine.
Right, so,
She said people are already obligated to that fee for the pickup. and then-
Unless they're able to find you before they get there. No text.
okay. So, I don't know, my brain's not working.
So page 138 is
Yeah.
Kayla's
Yeah.
email.
So let me go back to the. Okay, so let's do 35 a day, because that's for the care of the dog.
I
Okay.
can't sit there any longer.
I can't either.
It's uncomfortable.
Oh, come on,
I'm telling you, I can.
sit in the red ones.
Oh, they're even worse.
Have a nice night, everybody.
See you later.
Yeah.
Take care,
Okay,
Mark.
so we're saying the fine already covers it, so the $35 to board the dog, okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Me, okay.
Wondering, said.
You said me, but I think he means nay.
So so I've made this one change and then the retractable, where exactly am I making that?
Says a fixed physical leash. So let me see what that was. I think it was that was confusing. I think that's pretty straightforward.
So that's section 3.3.
Yeah, so this is
Okay.
no section 6 restraint of dogs.
You might say fixed length. And then it makes it clear.
Oh, I see.
She was saying we should put in parentheses, no retractable.
Yeah, you said fixed length, so fixed could be interpreted as attached to, or it could mean. You know, fixed length.
Okay.
So it looks like that term comes up in section 3.3 and in section 6.
So just say fixed length.
A fixed length, physical leash in both locations.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right, so on the hunting law, we want to just leave it as is, which means hunting is still outlawed. unless select board permission is obtained.
I would like to remove it from one. Well, take no action, I think it's a town meeting.
I'd like to remove from the warrant, so
Well, if it can be.
that's one less thing to,
I think that needs a lot more study, because if we don't do anything, nobody can still hunt because they need the select board permission.
I know, but that's what bothers me about it, though. We have no process, so there's just this arbitrary process, you know.
But it doesn't have to be arbitrary until we can get a program in place, we can say no to all of them.
Well, that's what we do. With 3 people have asked
Okay.
in the last 3 years, and we said no to all of them.
But
So
again,
it's-
the problem isn't hunting, it's.
Exactly,
in
it's the
proximity to other
Right.
activities.
For me, the problem is more that there's a restriction with no defined process. I think that's unfair to, you know, it's unfair to this board to try to make those decisions, and it's unfair to the public who might want to hunt. But in order to fix that, we'd have to have a committee and form regulations, and it's just a whole big thing.
Well, I think that'd be great, and I would actually ask Ross to be involved with chairing that. And really, you get 5 or 6 people together, you pick up parcels of land, you set up certain regulations, you know, what times of years and how it has to be posted, who can get the permits and how. I think to put it out there now is just gonna be problematic.
Well,
Or
if
you
that-
already have a way to prevent it currently.
Yeah, so I guess that's a good solution. If we've kind of started the conversation, people are engaged, we just leave it as is and then hope that some of those engaged people.
that's what I think. And
We not hope that, I think we make a
The
request to
topic-
people.
The topic is on the surface now, so let's keep it on the surface and
Yeah.
move along. I'm not gonna support outright banning it, I would rather go into this intelligence. It's gonna be sticky. When we change it, it's gonna be sticky in that new position.
Yeah.
And I'd rather get it right when we make the change.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion
We do
to?
have, Graham's raised his hand.
I don't want to interrupt. It's tough on Zoom there. I don't want to dive in. I'll keep it brief. I don't want to drag this out, but just kind of to the point of, I've had a couple of people that have reached out to me about this, and the idea basically of having a setup where you first we start off with sort of a group of people, and I've had people that have already said they would volunteer to be involved in this, of setting up sort of a working group to figure out what would the rules be and how this would look. And Carol Decker actually, in her previous experience, has worked with us before, where you set up a lottery system, you keep it tight hours when nobody else is out there, you restrict the area, and basically you can make this work. And she's, you know, seen it happen before, but as long as you have a good process and a good protocol here, and maybe there's some sort of education involved you have to do, but it can be successful. And I was actually surprised the amount of people that are hunters that I didn't even realize hunted, and that have come to me and said, what do you know about this? What's going on here? So I think there is definitely a larger population sort of lying under the surface than at least I was aware of, that are interested in being actively involved in this process.
And are they currently hunting on town land illegally?
Of course not. I wouldn't bring those people into a committee like this. No, I mean, they travel, they go somewhere else. And, you know,
That's where we're headed with this, so, Michelle, did you have something different to add? I mean, we've agreed to remove it from the warrant and then have a committee or whatever, so.
Yeah,
Beth,
I
would you-
think echoing Graham's comments and the comments made about a committee, I think is a good idea, you know, and just kind of expanding. It's fine for people to leave town and go hunt other places, and it's fine for people to not be able to come into town and hunt. But I do think that proper, you know, conservation of a lot of our land, you know, where we have altered ecology so much and we don't have natural predators, it does include hunting. And there's a lot of literature on that from state and federal land management agencies, and echoing Graham's comments that lots of conservation oriented groups and other towns and conservation commissions have pulled this off successfully to manage deer populations. And then just one, you know, comment aside from that, a lot of the feedback I skimmed through the meeting agenda, you know, is on the sound of guns. And I get it, if we were to do archery, it would be silent, but I do want to still point out that there is the areas along the Merrimack River and tidally influenced portions of the Indian River where hunting is a protected right for fowling by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We actually had someone reach out today asking about it. So I hear what we're trying to do, but there's still going to be hunting in our town in close proximity to trails And I think we could do really well to look at other states and areas that are able to get people educated, and we're wearing Blaze orange, and hey, this is hunting season. If this is something you don't want to be in close proximity to, you know, maybe take a break from those trails near the river for whatever the season is. It's brief. So I think education again on this one would be huge, and I would be happy to be a part of it. I'm sure Concom members would be too.
Okay, all right, so do we have a motion to,
Make a motion to remove the hunting bylaw from the town warrant.
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next item is confirm location for special and annual town meetings.
This was, put on after this partly because, you know, we'd had wetlands and animal and hunting and everything else. I definitely think we'd be running into a real, I don't think that annex would accommodate. It's a guessing game. I've spent a fair amount of time with Jim today talking about this. Page School is an option, which he verified some time ago. We pressed further on the logistics of that in terms of like setup time, removal, because if we have it at Page and if it ends up going to a second night, that does put our public works crew in a place where they have to have the chairs removed the next morning because the cafeteria still got to be used for lunch, and then have to set up the chairs again that afternoon, potentially for a second night. So there's a lot of logistics. We'd love to have it at the annex. We control the space. We know, so, but I think that, if we think there might be, you know, comparable turnout to last spring or more, and I think there will probably be, as much as I hate to say it, I feel like we ought to look at Page. One thing Jim and I talked about is, could we, if it did both be at Page and go a second night, could is it necessarily that the second night has to be at Page? And he and I both felt, if it said clearly on the warrant, if the meeting extends to a second night, it will be on date certain, time certain, location certain, being the annex, that's proper notice, that's proper posting. So that's something I wanted to put on the table tonight is, you know, where are we gonna have it? And then do we wanna have, if everyone feels we ought to have a Page, should we stick with that, or should we have, if it goes to a second night, go to the annex?
I think it's a great idea,
Yeah.
particularly if the MBTA communities
It's off, right?
is.
Well,
Is.
It's off. It was off until 20 minutes.
Or I'm sorry, not MBTA communities, but,
I think the hunting bylaw coming off is some number of people.
yeah, no, I meant the conservation, wetlands spot. Particularly if we can, if that's positioned, so that we get to that the first night, I don't recall where.
It's
it is.
early in the bylaws.
Yeah, so.
But the
special
annual comes
first.
up after the special, and
Right.
it really has a lot to do with whether the things that I think we all see are pretty routine items like lawnmowers and plow trucks. If people are in a bad mood and everything becomes an argument, this could go on quite a long time.
Yeah.
If those things fly through, then I think there's every reason to check their wetland bylaw, maybe even the entire warrants on the first night.
They seem to be, the past few years, very quick on getting through the line items and.
Yep.
And the operating budgets.
The whole last year, there wasn't a single question on the
Right.
entire line item budget. It was like, that was almost frightening, so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest Page, and I would say both nights, because you don't know what's gonna happen if it goes a second night.
You know.
You could have more people the second night, you don't know.
Yeah.
So to sit there
And
and have it here, then you're really in trouble.
And the reason for not the high school, because I think you looked at both of them.
We did, yeah, the auditorium, we don't think really lays out well for a town meeting.
Yeah.
You might need to even have people in the balcony, that logistically would not be ideal, depending on, I mean, that'd be.
Yeah, do a hand count.
But yeah, so there's logistical reasons, it doesn't really, as opposed to like a flat surface of the gymnasium where it would really be the same as the annex in a different location.
Yeah.
So we think like, and with the moderator, she's been to Page, she and Jim walked over there, she was very comfortable with that. We feel like it's a more manageable space.
Yeah, no, the only thing that changed, I think, was that you didn't know really that you were gonna have to set up twice. I think that's the only.
Right,
That's the only thing that really.
Yeah, that's a headache, but it's
Yeah,
definitely
right,
doable.
yes.
Yeah, it's definitely doable.
I agree with Chris. I think it should be both, because you don't know that you don't wanna run out of space at the annex for the second night.
No, you don't, that
not
would be a huge problem.
Huge problem. So I think, yeah.
It would be, but I think it's pretty unlikely. I don't think there'll be as many people with that night.
That's true, but I'm fine with that, yeah, and, yeah.
Thursdays and, sorry.
All right, so we'll post it for Page School.
And so
we
what
did,
nights, do
uh,
we choose?
well, that's a great, yeah, so what would be the second night? Would it be Tuesday?
Pick one right after the other, yeah. You're gonna lose momentum if you don't.
Casey was always resistant to that type of thing.
Yeah, that's right. I don't remember her reasoning.
But she always said that it was to the will of the people that were there then or something. No, I'm just,
We have to say what it is now, but we can't let people decide.
I don't think you need to say tonight, we need to know because we have to have
Yeah.
a handle on the logistics, so
Yeah.
I don't think it's something you'd put in the warrant. Other than if it was a different location,
That's right, I think
so, but I think that we need to know and we need to
yeah,
make sure
you
that's.
said Page School needs to know. All I'm saying
Any
is,
other
all
date,
I'm
so you
saying
have to
is,
define it at that point, but you don't have to define
right,
it at the outset.
But we need to reserve the space. though.
yeah, you need to reserve the space, but all I'm cautioning is that, I seem to recall in the past that Casey, the moderator, who controls the meeting, has been resistant to letting the second night be set ahead of time, that's all, it's just a thing I remember.
Okay,
So just to chime in on that one, I did talk to Casey, and just to get her feel on if she felt would it be appropriate to do the next day or delay it a little further, and she felt kind of what Chris said, if the momentum's there, just keep it going the second night.
okay.
So
Thank
it
you.
sounds like you're, well, great, okay, good.
So, what's the capacity of the annex? It was over
It's not
200.
actually rated. Last spring, Jim pulled the number, I think it was 284 last spring, and I think we all felt that
Your
was.
capacity.
a bit
That
above.
that was only voters. I didn't include staff.
You know, the first night, there's 220 people. Do we really expect that we'll exceed the capacity of the annex? The second-
Honestly, if there's 220, we'll probably get through it all the first night.
Right,
I'm not sure I see follow that, but.
Well, just if there's more, debate could go on longer, more things it could get more rambunctious.
So the more people, the more rambunctious, the more people, the more rambunctious.
Yeah.
If people come out because they're excited, they tend to also start picking up stuff that they haven't really been following, but they're there, so why not ask? And so, if it's your standard, if it's 220, that's less than what we had last spring, but those are your solid people that are used to it.
Yeah, and we look back a few years, it seems like that's, and you know this, that's about the baseline. It's like 200 to 220 is kind of a typical annual
And
time.
I think we were higher last time because of Sawmill Brook or,
Definitely.
because I thought it was a school, but we went through the school thing and everybody stopped, and then we did the conservation, purchase, and everybody was still hanging, and then they left. That was pretty
We've got a
interesting.
smattering of issues on this warrant.
Right.
So I think we're gonna draw.
You're gonna draw-
a large crowd.
You're probably right.
Yeah,
okay, so that's all you need for this.
That's
right?
all I need for that,
All
yeah.
right,
Thank you.
you guys gonna
Great.
stick around?
thank you, oh, it's been so much fun.
All right, so should we go back to town manager updates?
Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna take off.
Take care, Dan.
Yeah, thanks,
So
everybody.
here, most everything you need to know is in the packet. I did want to just give a brief, there was a, pretty significant meeting yesterday afternoon, being by the lieutenant governor. So, yeah, the lieutenant governor's office had reached out last week and asked for, basically one person from each community, so with myself, my counterparts, the couple of mayors, few mayors, all the state reps, all the state senators, Lane Glenn from Essex, Community College, Northern Essex, so it was, it was a pretty significant convening is what they called it. Lieutenant Governor did a lot of the talking. I took detailed notes. I can send these around. It doesn't say anything that's not, laid out, but, basically, the three things that she was focused on were the statement of interest, the MSBA, which we expect Whittier probably voted last night, probably submitted tomorrow. She really emphasized there's a lot of program analysis as well as building analysis, and that it's gonna require an RFP and getting a consultant to really do like a space needs assessment for both institutions. And she really really emphasized that they're at the very, very, very beginning of the idea stage, and so there's a lot of details that need to be looked at to even see if this is a viable. There's a lot of excitement, enthusiasm, but it's just an idea. And she was kind of trying to build excitement, but also temper expectations, which I think is very fair. So they're very excited about the opportunity to explore it and how to turn the idea into something more real. The third thing she said was her focus was stakeholder group, and including community members and a larger community, focused among other things on the region's workforce needs and future, how this collaboration could best support that. She was clear that would not be a building committee, but to understand what we have and how we can get where we're trying to get. Later in the discussion, she did say that this stakeholder group is not something that would be like 20 or 30 people. She said they'd probably be looking at a town official and a city official. They wanted to be but they would communicate early and often with everybody, but that it would be a tighter group. Steve Crane, my counterpart in Ipswich, he kind of waved the flag on the regional agreement, talking about how important that not get, subsumed by this, and he said everything I think, Chris, you would have wanted him to say.
Oh.
And he texted me immediately afterwards and said, I think I've taken myself out of the running to be on the board.
No, keep them there.
Because the lieutenant governor did pretty much, she said, I didn't write this down, but I recall, she said, thank you, Steve, for asking the hardest question first. She went on to say, we've been trying to focus on areas that are less divisive. Essex Tech needed a special act to get local and state funding. I think it's premature for purposes of this idea to understand the funding model without understanding if we even have a concept that's going to work. I don't know that there's a solution for it until we know if we have something that can work. We're at the beginning of that journey. If we have something that works, we'll need to see how to fund it. So there is definitely like a bit of a schism between.
That's problematic though. I mean, I feel like now's the time to do it.
Well, and Steve re-emphasized, he said, he was saying this is a parallel track. It's not,
Yeah.
and it will be, I think
Better
that.
be.
But we have
It's
the working
gonna
group.
happen. Yeah.
That working group, is that group gonna dissolve and let this one take over?
You know as well as I do, I mean, we don't know, yeah.
But at that last meeting, Angus and I were there, and they were so focused on Northern Essex project that there was very little conversation and almost got forgotten that this is your chance to work on the regional agreement.
Any discussion of the poll that they sent out?
Was,
So it was some discussion, it was handed, the results were handed around, it was some.
poll from us.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, everybody's on the same wavelength as far as that. I thought you meant some other poll.
No.
But the discussion it really did get lost on the regional agreement, and the mayor of Haverhill 4 times said, absolutely no, never changing anything, period. It was critically clear.
just one nuance, she said, I don't disagree with what she said, but she said, to the extent any changes are with the intent of changing the funding model, changing the provision for people to exit the district.
Or the voting. So that's.
It's no. So, but just to be complete. that
So
she did-
I found that to be problematic, because that's a line in the sand. You really, if the district is gonna fund any project, whatever it is, you better have the agreement taken care of first, because this is your only opportunity. And I don't know if our working group continues, that would be my stance, but I don't want to represent for you and Rick.
Yeah, I agree.
If you differ on that, because I said it a few times in the meeting, as did Mr. Crane and as did the fellow from Raleigh. But other than that, it was kind of lost. This was supposed to be the mayor of Newburyport, Whitney up the supporting documents on the Whittier thing. He actually said that that's gotta happen, but he wasn't at this meeting. He had car trouble. he would have been very helpful with the discussion, I think, because
It's
it
kind of
kind
an
of,
odd meeting to miss.
yeah, and it flew, oh, yeah, get an Uber for Christ's sake.
Right, leave the car by the side of the road, get an Uber.
Yeah, call me, I'll pick you up. Anyway, so I don't know what your thoughts are, Rick, on that. Is the regional agreement as critical as I think, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
I
it's,
really,
it's,
this
yeah,
trouble,
I mean,
this is great news, this potential project.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if we lose sight of the situation we were in 6 months ago.
And I did mention that we can't go down the same road again and have the same result. And the mayor got very upset with me over that. She said, why not? I said, "'Cause we can't have it fail again. You gotta get a project." So that's why you've gotta get the agreement in place before you vote on a project. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see how one,
Yeah.
they can run
I
parallel
could see
track.
them be parallel. So what happened with the middle high school, those regional agreement changes were nowhere near as significant. They were more housekeeping things. But those were voted on at the very same town meeting as the middle high school. I think that's probably what's gonna have to happen.
But I would not encourage anybody to vote on a new project until modification to the regional agreement satisfactory to the district members was in place.
Right, but it could be.
Even if it's 1 minute apart. I don't care.
Exactly, yeah, and that's how I think, like, realistically, it would probably have to go.
But then you've got to get all it's got to be unanimous on the districts. And then if that passes, then the vote doesn't have to be unanimous for the project, which
Right.
could be another event. So that 1 minute in 10 different communities or whatever it is, very
That would be
problematic.
challenging, right.
So it might not happen that quickly together. So anyways,
So was there another date to be set?
No.
Yeah, this is gonna fall apart.
well, not the original group, but the group I went to, we did pick another meeting. We're gonna do it on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, that's got another date.
Oh,
That's
okay.
on May 1st,
Okay.
which is now the same day as the MVP.
Right.
Fortunately, this one is gonna be remote,
Okay.
and I think it's gonna be at 3 or 3:30, so I should be able to do both.
Okay.
It'd be a busy afternoon. I know.
Right after town meeting. I know.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
That's what lunch hours are for. You can just work.
All right, anything else from that meeting?
Nothing else on Whittier.
Was it better attended than the one that you and I went to?
Probably a few more people.
I think you might have had 2 from a lot of the communities, but I think there were 4 communities that didn't show.
Yeah, there were.
Merrimack was not there again. I don't think Georgetown was there.
Georgetown wasn't there.
Salisbury?
Yeah, Neil was there, and Neil
was great.
Harrington did say that he felt that, and I don't think this is in conflict with what you were saying, but he did say he felt there was a price point that the cost allocation wouldn't be as material, meaning if, the state higher ed or some other source comes in and the local costs get down to a point, he didn't think that, at least in his community, that people would be like necessarily as fixated on the cost allocation if it was down to a price they could live with.
He's probably correct on that concept, but you're gonna lose your opportunity forever to change the agreement.
Yeah,
This
And
year,
plus, how long until this goes, I mean, we still have to support the school until, and,
right.
you
yeah, but what he's saying is and I think with the Northern Essex component, didn't they say federal funds could come into play too?
I
There was a
can't
mention of
remember.
it, whether it's,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
either way, he
yeah.
said if the number
They
goes,
said foundation funds,
Yep.
and they said state higher
Yeah.
ed, but yeah,
if
I
it
don't
goes
think
from
they
the
said
450,
that.
he said if it goes from 450 down to say 250, everybody's assessment is much less and it becomes palatable. His point is correct, but you're still paying disproportionate amounts. So it's just, what point do you?
yeah, I have a feeling that that's what's gonna happen. It's gonna be a lower price tag and then people are gonna lose interest in the agreement, which I think.
Right, which is why I think the agreement should be
Yeah,
the issue of push right now versus.
all right, I'm in favor of pushing. Rick, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think we need to change the agreement.
All right, you have your marching orders.
See if anybody listens.
Okay,
In terms of other updates, I included the Moody's report, that's something that's, they send these to us every so often, they typically send them, and you have 48 hours to respond. And so, we did, and we actually found a couple of issues, but they didn't make any changes, that's fine. But yeah, Christian pointed out that what they're showing is the assessed values don't actually match our assessed values, but they got back to us and said they basically use every other year because they get the data from the state. So even though we provided them actual information, they still didn't change it. Yeah.
Typical.
But anyway, that's that. The schools I already spoke earlier about, the pocket, that was definitely something I wanted to make that point during updates. And, yeah, I think that's all I've got for.
Okay. So under department updates, we have the construction notice from Tina and Howard for Church and Prospect. Did you hear Mark when he came in before and said that they're looking for permission to store their pipe?
I overheard, but I wasn't focused.
Yes, I don't know if he was looking for us to take action on that. I mean.
He said the
yeah.
select would have to approve it, but he didn't ask us to take action, so I don't,
And he said they want us to start putting the pipe there next Tuesday.
on the ferry landing.
Yes, I don't know what that means for us. I mean, it's not on the agenda, but, so FYI.
Well,
You can take up things that aren't reasonably expected if we choose to.
yeah,
He's not here, so I don't,
yeah, and so it would, the request be to close that portion and to authorize that as a stage, as a laydown area?
yeah, but he
That's-
was.
It sounded like that was the point, yeah.
Yeah, but he was annoyed that,
Yeah, right.
that they were just springing it on us, so
Right.
I don't know whether he's gonna hold the line or.
Apparently, there was some discussion when they were.
At the pre-construction
Yeah,
meeting.
reconstruction,
Yeah.
there was some discussion of that. And Mark said that he told them, well, that's the, you know.
He did
you
say
need-
that.
You need to pursue it if that's what you
He
want.
did say that, and he did
Apparently,
say,
they
someone
pursued
said
it today.
that.
So. That,
Yes, no. I mean, if they're gonna do it, you have to have documentation of pre-site conditions and a contract that they would restore damaged area.
Yeah, and you wanna know how the fencing, how it's gonna be secured, all that
all
stuff.
right, so that,
Just like we did, and this is something I can point Mark to, not that it's our job to do the contractors work for them, but, you know, we could point them to what was provided when the Rocks Village Bridge construction approved the same thing, where there were plans submitted.
But then they beat up the boat ramp by parking their barge every night, totaled it and never replaced it.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned that I wasn't involved at the time, but it's like, you can't do that. They were gone.
I didn't know that.
Well, boat ramps
it
on
was,
state land.
Michelle, do you intentionally have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a comment to that because I talked to Mark about it today and there is an overlap with conservation because they have an order of conditions for it. I don't know the logistics of approving a location for laydown materials, but I know when this was going through permitting, we were under the impression that the trenches would be covered at the close of every workday with steel plates. And I get or don't get, but I'll believe that there's an OSHA reason why that's no longer like appropriate. So the trenches are going to be backfilled at the end of every day, and at the beginning of every workday, that material is going to come out. So one thing I've asked for, you know, and I want to put on the select board's radar as well as these plans come in, is where is that fill material going? The order of conditions has no stockpiling in the 100-foot buffer zone. So Ferry Park's all within that area. So it's a logistical issue. So I was chatting with Mark today about it. He said he was going to call Steve from Tata and Howard. And I know they're chomping at the bit to get started. I have a pre-construction site visit on the 17th at 7 a.m. to look at wattles. So it's all moving kind of quickly at this point. That's all.
all right, thanks, Michelle.
I mean, earlier this week, Mark said they were looking to start Monday the 15th. Mark and I both agreed that we were not gonna authorize that. It's a town holiday and
Mhm.
the guys, that's a holiday. So we said Tuesday the 16th. They did authorize start, project to start the 16th.
So I wonder if they can start though, if they don't have a laydown area.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the first time.
Your front yard's out of the buffer zone, right?
No?
No.
All right,
Well, that sounds like,
off to a great start.
yeah.
Well, I actually just noticed in the Tate and Howard letter, it actually says the April 15th date, which is specifically not what we said, and I just got this whenever I sent it out Tuesday. When I sent it out to you Tuesday, so. It's not actually the 15th, it's the 16th.
All right.
Wonderful.
So,
Keep your phone shut off.
yeah, any instruction on how to manage this while you're gone? Just, can we tell them no? You have to wait till the next select board meeting or?
Of course you can.
All right, well, is that what we want to do or,
And either that or you can convene an emergency meeting.
yeah,
But that's up to you. How you
Well,
want
I
to.
told them to take care of it. They haven't, so that's not our worry. If they want to get on a agenda and talk, they can.
are you,
But I mean, I certainly don't want to, this makes me a little nervous with, you know, like, we don't want to be hit with a change order or something. Not that we should, but again, like,
was that documented that they had to get permission from the select board? It was
it
discussed.
came up in the pre-construction meeting. I know I took notes. I don't know how detailed my notes are. Steve Dene was there taking notes. I haven't seen the notes.
No, back up from the
So-
meeting though, because what they own is the contract.
Right.
Forget whatever you said in the
No, I
meeting.
know, but the contract, it all goes through Tate and Howard
Does the
and
contract provide for them to use
I,
state land?
do you think I've read the contract?
I don't know.
I mean, do you know how much work I do? I don't
Then
have
let's-
time. No,
I
I
can
don't,
find the
I have
contract.
not read the contract and,
I
so
agree,
I
you
don't know
don't-
what it says.
You don't want to get hit with a change of it, so if they have,
Exactly.
if it's in the contract and they have the right to do it, you allow them to do it. But with
Well,
conditions.
the contract couldn't give them the right to do it because there's no one other than this board that has the authority to give them the right to do it.
All right, I'll follow up with Mark tomorrow and see if he
Okay.
can look at the contract and,
Yeah,
but still,
So Wendy, if there does need to be a,
and just so everyone knows, I'm not the signatory to the contract. I do read the contracts I sign, but the Board of Water Commissioners.
That's the problem with a lot of.
I just want to
petitions.
make sure everyone knows
Oh,
that.
no, we even said that they had to review it and.
Yeah,
So I understand that.
yeah.
Rick, what were you gonna say?
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, if we have to meet, then you know. I don't wanna see this turn into a change order. I don't wanna see the costs
Sure.
start to go. So if we have to meet, you know, then we should do that.
Okay.
Obviously, it's preferable not. I thought we all had a vacation because Agnes was gonna be off.
All right.
And by the way, just actually, I don't know if people, Jim's off next week too,
Oh, my gosh.
so.
Jim, you're killing us.
Free reign at town hall.
Max is in charge? Oh, boy, more Star Wars folks.
All right, so stay tuned for that one. I'll let you know when I find out. All right, item,
Yeah, Dwyer had sent out an email, you know, it went fine, it went smoothly, the EMA exercise.
okay,
They never come at a good time.
yeah.
It's very difficult to sit there for 6 hours when there's a lot of work to be done.
Item C, so Jim is registered.
Yeah, he's going
Okay,
tomorrow.
Great, all right.
So that's great.
do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then item
yeah.
D is the request from the conservation agent to comment on the proposed DEP wetland regs. So Michelle, I don't know if you're still there. I put your email in the packet, so we've seen that. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I just think, you know, especially in West Newbury, we talk a lot about climate change. We're talking about, you know, the impacts of that on River Road and how difficult that process is going to be. We talk a lot about invasive plant management and how difficult it is, you know, never mind for the town, but for a homeowner to do these types of projects on their land, and climate's changing and that's impacting the spread of invasive species as well. So I think if DEP is listening, now is a great time to throw together something and really start putting things on their radar. I'll be drafting a letter for Concom to review at their meeting on the 24th before we submit it, but they count each letter as one comment. So, you know, if the select board also felt strongly about things that are proposed in the current resiliency package, that's resiliency 1.0 that you can review, or future resiliency items, I hear that they're working on 2.0 now with a rollout date sometime in June or July. It would be excellent, you know, if the select board sent them comments as well.
So would it be more effective if we sent them individually than as a board? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Each comment is,
That's what I'm hearing, is that each comment is its own comment. So for example, I'm part of Massachusetts Society of Municipal Conservation Professionals. We're sending out one letter, but we have membership of over 160 conservation agents, and we're encouraging each of them to send a letter as well. Because even though we have that large of a membership, our comments are just one comment on those items. So yeah, however you guys want to do it.
Would you be willing to share your letter?
Yes,
And
it
then we
doesn't,
could-
it doesn't
Okay.
exist yet, but as soon as it exists, I'm happy to send it out. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
you're-
I guess one more thing is Massachusetts Society of Municipal Conservation Professionals. They shared their draft letter today too. So I'm happy to send that as well because that's like super comprehensive. So that might be
that'd be
helpful.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we'll circulate that and we can.
Yeah, great. When's that have to be?
I
when
think
is
the
it?
30th.
30th, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to item D, the CIC report. Any questions on that, or Rick, did you want to provide any?
I don't think I really have anything to add. I think it says what it needs to say.
Yeah.
I have two comments.
Mhm.
I don't know why I placed the public safety complex exterior renovations at number 14.
Mhm.
My opinion, which is worth nothing. I think that that should be much higher. It's you let rotten stuff keep going and you're gonna have much bigger issues down the road, number one. Number two is you're benefiting from having Brian's labor force do most of the work. So it's probably the most cost-effective item on the list. So to me, that would have been
Mhm.
a higher priority. I thought it was curious, they put the electronic keying as number 15.
Yeah, so there's this litmus test.
I remember science class, you dipped a little strip in.
Not a pH limits.
And, it's imperfect.
We saw your spreadsheets before, I mean, that was the whole chart, yeah.
Well, I guess this, I don't want to get too deep into it tonight, but it brings me to just the question of the value of.
So we're meeting 3 days after town meeting. The CIC has a meeting.
Okay.
And the primary topic is to talk about what do we do about the litmus test.
Okay. I guess I'm looking.
And the bylaws part of that.
Right,
Yeah.
So will the questionnaire be taken up, or did you already talk about?
Yes, she said she put that on that agenda,
Okay.
yeah.
I feel like in some ways that the CIC was really necessary before we had a town manager, and I'm not sure. I mean, having been on it, what do you think?
I think I agree with you. I mean, I think I probably suggested to you before, Angus, I'm not really sure what the CIC accomplishes. Everybody's well-intentioned.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's all good, and quite honestly, I think it gives, a small subset of the voting population, insights that they would never have otherwise about what the town is doing and what, what's in the works.
Mhm.
But, I'm, at this point in time, I'm not really convinced the CIC, to say is necessary. And is providing information that actually significantly changes the decision-making process.
Right.
Yeah. I guess my concern, if it had net zero impact on town staff for these small group of people that are educated, well, there's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't justifying it based on that,
No,
but that is
It is
an advantage.
Yeah, but the amount of, I mean, it's making Angus do work twice, basically, he's
Right.
already reviewing stuff and we're reviewing it here
Right,
and then
right.
they're reviewing it,
And,
so.
the reality of it is that, as a CIC member, who doesn't also sit on the FinCom or on the select board, you learn a lot more than you would otherwise, but you still don't understand all the context. And it's impossible,
I think it's outdated, again, once you've got the town manager, the priority should be coming from him.
Right.
Number one, number two, you're saying the people to be engaged, well, Ross and Rick are on 2 committees already, so at least 4 other people, Lisa's on 47 committees. So you've got a few other people,
Yeah.
we got an opening on FinCom, so they can engage in plenty of other good ways.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and, you know, and be helpful, so.
Yeah, well,
So we're
That's
counting
it.
you to carry the flag at this meeting. I mean, I assume the CIC would have to agree to change the bylaw, right? Or to abolish it.
well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're suggesting is abolishment, which perhaps is appropriate, and, but quite honestly, I hadn't intended to go to that meeting with that, but I can. And I mean, it's not inappropriate, I mean, you know, I've wondered before, I know I've mentioned it to you, I guess, or suggested, I'm not quite sure what we're accomplishing. But I didn't, you know, I wasn't ready just to, you know, go full.
Is that the appropriate process? How do you dissolve?
Yeah, my suggestion would be, you know, we gotta look ahead to maybe a fall town meeting and think of, so I look at the May 2nd as really starting a conversation and not starting with a conclusion. I wish they would have scheduled it a bit later, because, and I did express my preference, but that was the date that worked best for everybody. But she had floated, I think the 16th and the 23rd, and I had said like the later would be way better. My concern is I don't expect to have much time to really, because I think the discussion really should be a much bigger, it should be the bylaw. It should also be the capital planning policy that the select board in this, and the finance committee, by the way, in December 2018 voted, which has some material inconsistencies with the bylaw. There's a whole backstory I won't go into now. But, and then Department of Revenue has a best practices in capital planning like book. And I feel like we ought to really look at like, what is the best, you know, what's the best role for a committee, if any? I don't want to start with an assumption it's not any, because I'm not sure about that. I've said before, I think having a group of citizens that's really focused on bigger long-term investments does have value of having that sounding board that's really drilling on that. I think where it's been really challenging the last many years, is I think finance committee is also doing that, so it becomes totally redundant. And it becomes where, and you see it with these packets where I'm sending out the same information again, and oh, this changed a little Tuesday night, you're meeting Thursday, like we're spending hundreds of hours preparing meeting packets, all of which is a huge problem, as you know. So I think it's got to be, I think if we're gonna have a reconfigured CIC, I think somehow maybe the FinCom has to then be deferential to them to not duplicate the process, and the FinCom may not like that. So right now, I definitely think there's a lot of problems that litmus test is worse than not good. I think it's actively bad, and when you have so many projects and you see things listed at 14 or 15 or 19, some number of voters are gonna see that as an indication they're not important when they are important. So I think there's all kinds of problems.
I just don't want to spend a lot of time like melding the guidelines and resolving the role if our real intent is to abolish it.
Well, that's, I'm not there yet because I feel like getting, you know, these are bigger, right now, you know, 20,000 is crazy, but when we really are talking about bigger costs, those certainly warrant a higher level of scrutiny, and I think that if the process worked well, and if we, you know, I think some pre-screening before late January when the warrant closes for capital articles could be really helpful. And I think given the select board's workload, that's probably not gonna be what this board does. So, you know, maybe that ends up being a broader charge of the finance committee to, I don't know, but I think some citizen sounding board before you hit prime time is good, and we saw this cycle with especially with some of the newer, you know, senior staff now in a proponent role, which they had never been in. You could see it meeting to meeting, they got better and better because they better understood the questions they would face and came in more prepared. So I think that's really valuable, and I want both me and my staff to be challenged before it gets to you having to decide whether to put something in the warrant, so.
Angus, if I could, to one thing you said, I think a good starting point actually would be to look at the best practices as the DOR has published, because the solution to this may actually be in there. And
Well, and the local policy that was voted in December of 2018 was by DOR, was the consultant with the community compact, and what happened, and it's a quick story, I'll keep it really quick, but the board voted in early December. I was in my first few months, I'd been cultivating a relationship with Dick Preble, you know, he'd been there 20 years, I wanted to build trust, I'd been meeting with him, I met with him like a week before. And I told him, all of which I thought was aligned with the board I was working for, I said, this first cycle, we're gonna do it the way we've always done it, I'm new, I wanna understand how you've done it, I'm not coming in looking to make changes, I really wanna see what's working well, and maybe after the first, we'll probably have changes, we might recommend, but I was very deferential, you know. And then on December 3rd, the board votes this new policy, and at the next meeting, Joanne, the former selectman, said, so let's propose to repeal the capital. Well, I said, Joe, I just met with the chair a week ago. I'm trying to build trust here. Like, I'm not gonna then, because no one would ever believe I would become a liar, because Joe had some idea that he didn't share with me. So anyway, that, unfortunately, he might have been right, but the process would have been 100% wrong. Because I, as the new town manager, would have completely alienated a really important committee. So it unfortunately had the effect of like, you know, they should have been involved with the adoption of that policy. It just was not, you know, the board at the time, it wasn't being handled properly, process-wise.
so is there perhaps a chance for a few people, maybe a couple from FinCom, a couple from current CIC, to go through the best practices?
I think that'd be great.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what I would recommend, because now we get a dialogue going, maybe we come up with a solution. Maybe the solution already exists. By the way, the changes that have been put into place, did you look favorably on them, just on the timing, or?
You mean the new policy that was adopted?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, going into that meeting on December 3rd, 2018, I didn't know the board had the intent to vote those policies. I thought that was a working meeting between the board and the finance committee to look at 19 new financial policies, and before I knew it, all those in favor, second, they adopted 5 policies that night, and I, as the town manager, went into that meeting not knowing they were gonna, so I had been so busy with all the things, I don't need to bore you, I hadn't fully vetted them, nor had the staff whose responsibilities were affected by these policies. It was so bad. I was not happy. Like, they just adopted 5 policies, and there's typos in there. There's stuff in there that reflects that at a staff level, I didn't even know this was like, I thought this was a working meeting.
So, yeah, so maybe that's.
It was a very different time. It was a very different time. It was.
So I only asked
And it was
because.
4 days before the police chief.
But we should.
I mean, it was a lot going on.
We should include that in.
It's December 7th, the day that we're living in for me.
If people got together to review stuff, that would be certainly something to be
Yeah.
reviewed.
Yeah,
But I would start with what the state is suggesting.
Yeah.
And then see what percolates from there,
Yeah.
because we could come up with stuff that's
yeah,
more tailored to us. You know, all of us,
Yeah.
the way we've always existed. But I agree with you, the redundancy, the timing. I mean, we had to go through the articles in the manner we did. And the final report comes out afterwards, so, you know, I mean,
yeah.
there's stuff that we need to, however it solves itself, I think we can, you know, just consider that. 2 from them, 2 from us, we go through it, you know, choose your team wisely, always. You know, there's people that are very helpful to the process, people that can interfere in it. And then, you know, maybe we'll come up with something to propose to you guys. Angus, does that sound okay?
I think that sounds good,
Great.
yeah.
Great.
I know there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do think whatever the outcome, if that's a change to the bylaw, and it's gotta be a change to the bylaw, But whether it's a change or whether it's repeal, how we get there is gonna be so important to not having anyone feel,
Yes.
alienated or,
And we may actually end up not alienating anybody.
I think that's very likely. if
I
we
mean, why
handle it
not? I
right.
mean, we
It's
do
absolutely.
so much together.
Yeah, because I think everyone recognizes there's problems to be solved, so.
So will you be floating that idea? at the-
Yeah, and I can, this stuff I mentioned, the bylaw, the policy and the state,
Yeah.
best practice, I can get that into circulation sooner than later and make sure that's part of it.
But I would emphasize the best practices. I think sometimes you gotta go elsewhere
Mhm.
to get your mindset. If we just focus on what we have in place right now, I
Yeah.
think you have the same discussions.
Yeah, well, and what's unfortunate, this policy I mentioned, it is findable on our website, it's in with all the bylaws and policies. I don't think most members of the CIC know it exists.
Right.
All right. So we have the insert from the water bill. Any comments on that? All right. So in here is the Board of Fire Engineers questionnaire. I guess we don't have a representative, however, we do have a liaison.
So this was the first time I'd seen the,
Yeah, Mike sent it to me a couple weeks ago. So I had some questions, but I guess if he's not here, do you know about the staffing plan that?
I know some generalities, having, somebody staff the firehouse during weekdays, and it'll be rotating between, different people. The problem has become, quick response during the week.
When people are at their day job?
Right, yeah, when people are out of town, so, these will be people who, can be there during the day. And there's plenty of other work for them to do, things that they would be doing anyway, and they would be coming in to do anyway. So they'll be plenty busy, but they'll be in a position to respond quickly if there is a call.
And so the budget that was presented
Yes.
has this.
Yeah, accounts for that.
Yeah.
I do think it warrants some
Yeah,
discussion,
yeah.
I really do,
Okay.
with the
All right.
chief here, because there have been some concerns we've had at the finance department about actual hours worked in certain instances with certain employees,
Okay,
actually start to trip certain thresholds in terms of eligibility for certain
all right,
things,
okay.
which may or may not be. And I've talked to the chief about it, but I don't know that that's really getting through, and I certainly don't think it's something this board's been part of those discussions.
I feel like there's been no discussion
There is.
left out of it, and there will be, listen, when she give them us probably wants a cookie, whatever. I don't wanna do the Archie stuff, crickets in the ants, but you start with one and it's, where does it go? What's the full plan and what's the time frame and all that? We've been,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think.
I think that's appropriate for us to have that
Yeah, and
conversation.
I also think, we ought to be, including explicitly in that discussion, regional collaboration. Cause I know just in my conversations with Rebecca Oldham, what's gone on and what's going on with their fire department, and it's metastasizing. That's not the right word, that's not
But we get the
shouldn't
point.
have said that, but it's growing and growing, and striving to grow more, and, so we need to be really, aware before we start growing, that we're optimizing the potential for shared resources.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a huge cost problem in Groveland.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem there, you probably know more than I do, but they got state grant. And
Yes,
they
that's
brought,
exactly
and they
right.
brought
Yeah.
2 firefighters in. And the state grant ran for 2 years or 3 years.
That's exactly.
And then And then it went away, and all of a sudden this, you know, you have this new $200,000 or whatever the number happens to be, obligation. And no way to fund it, so.
Right.
Again, it's a conversation we need to have. I have a lot of other questions when we get.
Well, I mean, we did, you know, and at one of the two or three meetings that I've been at for the Board of Fire Engineers, we talked about that a little bit, about that is not the intent. And this was actually a way to try to functionally achieve what, you know, what Groveland did without the level of commitment, you know, without doing it the way that Groveland did it, essentially having people in here on call, you know, who are typically called firefighters.
It should
coming
be
in-
like a
but-
discussion.
But there should be, and I agree with you, and I'm glad that I've seen this here, but, I didn't bring it up because the opportunity really isn't, there's enough other stuff going on. But yeah, I think it would be good.
Okay.
There is some good news on the public safety front, which is that we did, yesterday, sometime in the last 2 days, signed an offer letter for a new, admin support
great.
for Dwyer.
Great.
And I haven't met her, but, her resume looks good, and Rebecca was in on the interviews, and she sounds terrific
Good.
and very, knowledgeable on a lot of things that will be helpful, so after many months now of not having any, well, Sue's been in like 1 day a week, but, so that's something, that's gonna be good, to have some support on things like payroll and keeping track of like who's having how many hours and at what point does that become
Yeah.
an issue.
You said you signed the letter.
Yes,
Did you review it?
yeah, I reviewed it, yes,
I don't want to do things twice wrong.
yeah.
Just gonna ask every time.
Yeah, no, definitely, I'm actually the appointing authority for that position, I'm like the,
Yeah, enough said.
Yeah.
enough said.
Yeah, all right. So if we're gonna wait to discuss this with the chief, I would like to wait on appointing the fire engineers. Is that all right? Because there were some.
Yeah, you have till the end of April, but
Yeah,
as long
I had
as it
some
gets on for
questions
April.
on Mark's role, and
Yep.
Mike had some good ways of how he prevents a conflict of interest. You know,
Okay.
being water superintendent, and I don't want to speak on his behalf, so if we could table those, that would be
Yeah,
great.
that's okay, I'll write that in for the 25th, or 20, whatever that Thursday is.
Yeah.
25th.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us down to, minutes.
No, request for appointment to historic district.
Oh. You're right.
Oh, and yeah, she had notified Jim she couldn't be here tonight. She does live in the district, and we would recommend her appointment.
Very much so.
Make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, put Janet LaRoe,
Janice?
Janice Barrett, I got both from, on the Historic District Commission.
And is that a 1 year or?
The term would be ending this June, and then she would be included with the whole group that's getting appointed for the full next term, 3 year kind of thing.
And that's an annual appointment for all positions?
Yeah, the for the June meeting, one of the June meetings.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, so we're up to the minutes. How about we do the general discussion item on the IMA first? Did anybody have comments on that? Are you looking to send that, Angus? Is that an action item or?
No, I've already sent it.
Okay. so
Yeah, it's already in circulation.
Okay.
And I had kind of zeroed out a couple of the material things,
Yeah.
knowing that that's all gonna need to be haggled. So I have not, had a chance to follow up with them to find out, if this has been agended. I did confirm it had been sent to their legal counsel, and I did give, Tim the direction to go ahead and contact Karis North and just start a dialogue, just to introduce himself, so he said he was gonna do that. But I don't know, when it's gonna come to the council's agenda, and it could be as early, I mean, I don't know, it could be on Monday's agenda for all I know. So,
Okay.
or Tuesday, so we'll keep an eye on that. Once I have, and I do intend before I leave town to reach out to, both the council president and the chair of the committee, that we've been in touch with, to find out what we can expect for next steps.
Okay,
I
great.
thought it read really well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, you don't have to fund it all now, you can bond it, the whole thing, the numbers are all nice and
Mhm.
Really nice, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, that's it for minutes, right? Anything else, I guess? Just the minutes, right?
Well, and then on the warrants, I think on the 50 or 80, I think what I'd like to do is just look into that tomorrow, get it right, and, because we're not gonna have them signed tonight, you know. Anyone leaving town tomorrow?
No.
Okay, so if we're getting signatures like late tomorrow afternoon or Saturday, we can do that, that's fine.
Okay.
And then the other was the 200,000, did we decide how we want to do
Yeah,
that?
so I would like to change it. You said you don't
I
care.
have no preference, whatever
And
works
you-
best for
You
everybody.
wanna leave it the way it was?
I'd kind of like to leave it the way it is.
Okay, so Chris, how much work is it if we change it? You said it's gonna be in multiple documents?
Everything's multiple documents. That's with the warrant and the booklet tripping over each other. Everything's multiple documents. It's, don't let that dissuade you. It's not a problem. It's just making sure everything's changed, so. But, yeah.
So then we have another article in the fall to reduce the cash,
I will bring it forward, whether you put it on is up to you, but I'm gonna bring it forward, every fall, because, I think.
if we are gonna do that, I would really strongly not wanna have it here now. Because the intent is really, it wasn't done to reduce the tax rate. It was to
I
help
think it's
us.
clearer to the voter to do what you're suggesting.
Mhm.
Transfer 200,000 from free cash into stabilization,
Yes.
because that's what you're doing.
Right.
That's the clearest thing.
You agree with that, Rick, if we change it?
Well, notwithstanding what Angus said, I really don't want to put any more work.
It's not, it's gonna be work either way, honestly, because, like, nothing is in final draft on the booklet. I mean, I'm still waiting on a ton of information. The booklet is gonna take me dozens of hours of time between now and whenever I can leave for vacation.
When was the last time, how often have we transferred money, has the town transferred money directly from free cash to stabilization in the past?
You transfer it from free cash to, pension liability or OPEB all the time.
Yeah.
But to just out and out stabilization, not in the 6 years I've been here.
So, to me, what I liked was that it was, you could find one number, one place and know what you had done as far as stabilization of course, this will all be burned in our memories now because we're talking about it more than we want to, but, I think it's valuable when you don't have to search for all the pieces when there's only one component. But maybe that's.
One thing that I think would weigh in favor of just putting the money from here to there and not through the budget is, unless you feel this increase is actually gonna be a permanent increase in the operating budget. And I don't think anyone knows that, because it was really added at the last minute. I think it was good it was added. We have a lot of costs coming. But to have it in the operating budget kind of, it's already gone from 3 to 5 to 6, and it goes to 8, then it goes back to 6. Whereas if it's just like 6, and this is like an extra shot in the arm, kind of like, actually, you know what, you did do it. You did it for the Middle Street Bridge.
Right.
Because it wasn't in stabilization. That 600,000 went direct from free cash into the stabilization because the Middle Street Bridge hadn't been really carried in the projections for capital costs.
Okay.
So that way we could have a standard budget amount, and if we have additional free cash,
Yeah.
then we could just have that be a supplemental,
Yeah.
maybe every year or something.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
It should be actually easy to find in the transactions, Jen would be able to pull those out of the transactions, right, people have the reconstruction.
Yeah, I was thinking more on the part of somebody who's a resident and who actually wants to dig around and look at it. Because I know I've tried to find things in the past
It's very hard.
and it's very
It's
hard.
very
No,
hard.
right.
Yeah, and that's true in every town. That's part of
Well,
it.
and that wasn't a critical.
No, I know. It's, yeah, and I wasn't taking it that way. It's just, but it's like really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no matter what you sit here and try and construct,
Yeah,
it's always.
it's
gonna
just
be
part
hard.
of,
Yeah.
part of
Yeah,
municipal.
right, the municipal finance stuff isn't meant to,
Yeah, make a
it's
motion.
more for DOR to be able to check things.
Yeah, let's just get this over with.
Yeah, I don't think we need to make a motion, do we? We're just.
Well, it's a little different than what you've talked about, so it's, because right
Actually-
now it's written.
What's in the minutes is what we've talked about. Is-
Oh, okay, but in terms of the article language, it sounds like you'd just be supporting to
Yeah, okay.
have
So-
that article read to transfer 200,000 from free cash into state.
Directly
budget.
stabilization.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. Alright.
Great. I think that's a good outcome.
Yeah,
So let's wait on the minutes. All right.
I've already been through them, I've already run the max on it, yeah. If
So
you,
did you make comments?
yeah, these are revised ones from Max.
Okay, because I like the,
You can have plenty of comments, because I don't catch everything for sure.
okay.
We can hold off, I don't know.
So did you have comments? And maybe we could get them to Max and then we could review. it.
Yeah, I think. I had,
When I'm looking for these two, I don't, spelling and slight typos, I could, if I see it quick, but I'm not looking deep to do, I'm looking for the votes and motions and actions taken.
Right. Right, so if you have multiple comments, I think we should wait.
Well, I don't, the ones he's put here have already been revised.
Okay, all right.
That's
then.
kind of been through these a week or two ago. So if you have comments,
Yeah, I do. The last one I had a lot of comments because I think some of the action items were missed and, let me see.
25th. What's the last one?
Yeah, so the first one that's in the packet, we already approved. This is an approval date on the bottom. And the footer.
Yeah, I already been through it before, so I didn't even look at that one, they told me next week done.
Okay, so this is February 26th minutes. At the footer, it says minutes approved March 25th. So we don't need to vote on it then.
My understanding was already approved too.
Okay. All right, so the next set, all right, my brain's too tired.
Well, we take a time out on
yeah,
Yeah,
that's okay, there's only 5 sets.
I know, they just keep getting
it.
longer.
Max looking to sleep to death. That's okay.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Adjourned.
All in favor?
did you do that last item after the minutes?
Yes,
The Middle Street Bridge?
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I had sent the draft IMA over the.
Oh, okay, great, so
Yeah.
you look, okay, good.
Yeah,
there isn't any, is there?
I don't know if there's correspondence. I just-
no, we always include that.
Oh, I've been to mention, and this is nothing we need to, I found any that, and I know we've adjourned, so. let's go on.